Well, hello there, folks. I'm just popped on a wee bit early there because we had lots and lots and lots of problems. Pardon me, trying to get online. No internet connection at all there, so I've made it with a minute to spare. That was close. I've been restarting and restarting. Goodness gracious me. So we'll just wait a wee moment or two till 9 o'clock to say, get ourselves going. And if anybody's out there in the meantime, say hello. Always nice to hear from you. You know, it's an absolutely terrible day here today. It's been quite warm, but it's very, very kind of misty rain. It's very, very grey and very, very ugly outside. You know, which is a bit sad, but hopefully waiting for some of the better weather. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, and it's going to be a good one today. I suppose we've pretty much finished our book, filled up one whole notebook, and had to get another one started. So it'll take 2 of these notebooks, actually, I think, to get through Dune Messiah. No more than that. We're heading now. There we go, folks. So it's 9 o'clock. I'll say hello, everybody. I'm Doc Sloan. Thank you very much for joining me on my science fiction station. And tonight we're setting off with chapter 16 of Dune Messiah, which kind of marks the two-thirds of the way through the book, mark, if you like. And there's Carlos saying, "Hey Doc, how's it going, Carlos? Hope you're keeping well." I would just say that I rather stupidly said that I would try and get caught up with all my correspondence there at the weekend. Didn't get a chance to get near it, and we're on Thursday here, and I still haven't done so. So apologies to everybody who I said I would get a response to. I've got a couple of emails I have to get back to. We've just had a bit of a funny week here, and we've had some bad news as well. That we've just found out a friend of ours passed away 3 months ago, very sadly. You know, and it's been a bit of a shock, to be honest with you. I suppose it shows you how out of touch I am, I suppose, these days. But yeah, it's been one of those things, you know, one of those weeks. So there's Carlos Cosella saying, "Hey Doc, hi Carlos, hope you're keeping well." And there's Brad Rose saying, "Good morning, Brad. How are you keeping? Hope you are both doing well, looking after yourselves." Let me get all these notebooks open. Excuse me, because we got 2 of them tonight. I kind of like it when we hit the end of a notebook. It's kind of fun. I like it because I get to set up the next notebook, and I like doing wee doodles and stuff and try to keep them. I don't know, but that's the way we've got this one. There we go, little geezer on a worm, just for the front page. And we've got an interesting little chart. It's actually not as small as the previous chapters we've had a look at. But it's got some interesting stuff. And I have to tell you, I was doing some of my etymological work on this chapter, and I hit a wall with one word in particular. And I ended up wasting 4 hours of my life trying to figure out what it meant. Excuse me. And I'm not quite sure why, but it took me around a number of the languages of the North American Indians. And in particular, I was kind of looking for etymological sources within the Meskwaki, also known as the Fox Indians, which I suppose the interesting thing is I utterly failed to figure out the meaning of this word. But I won't say that the 4 hours were wasted, because I ended up learning quite a lot about these people and looking at all sorts of dictionaries and stuff. And it was kind of interesting, but I think a couple of words today that I'm not quite sure about, or maybe somebody can help me. The word Tema, I think the best that I could do. Let me see. Was probably something to do with the Temagami First Nation. Which is another sort of thing. But that was it. I suppose maybe the search parameters I was using were bringing up the first part of the word. But we'll possibly go with Temagami for that and have a wee look at it later. See if it makes any sense. But there's Bojack saying, "Hi all." Hi Bojack. I hope you are all keeping well. And let's get cracking with our chapter 16. So if we get through this, we're 2/3 of the way through the story, and things will start to pick up a bit, I think, here. So here's our epigraph, number 16. No matter how exotic human civilization becomes, no matter the developments of life and society, nor the complexity of the machine-human interface, there always come interludes of lonely power when the course of humankind, the very future of humankind, depends upon the relatively simple actions of single individuals. And this is from the Tleilaxu God book, which is interesting, I think. And there's Brad saying, the beginning is the time for the greatest care. Doesn't mean you take your hand off the wheel once you're on your way. Regarding the new movies, the third will really blow out on change, I think. Yeah, I haven't looked too much at it, to be honest, yet, Brad. I've seen a few people commenting about, issues to do with Dune Messiah going ahead and this kind of thing. But I think it's going to be a right mess. And it's probably just going to be as bad as, as Dune, the part 1 and 2, in terms of how they've already mangled these characters. I'm still quite appalled, but I'm going to do some kind of response to it, I think. But I've also considered doing a full commentary on the whole film, and I'm thinking if I can get a bit of time here, I'm thinking on sticking the thing on here, putting the subtitles on, and just going for it and talk over the whole thing for however long it is and see how we do. But yeah, take your hand off the wheel once you're on the way. Regarding the new movies, the third will really blow out on changes, I think. Yes, I agree. It's the one thing, and it kind of, I think particularly Danny Villeneuve and those folks look at the first 2 Dune novels, and I think they'll be done, to be honest with you. The further down the road they go, I think the less cinematic these stories are, unless you absolutely butcher them and chop and change them, But they get, I suppose, as I said, they get the key plot points in. But the characters are not the characters from Dune, and I think that's appalling. I still do. I'm still quite just done in by it, because it's certainly not something that anyone else has done when trying to bring this, to the big screen, if you like. I still think that the best place for Dune is in the small screen on TV, some kind of Netflix series or something. But and with it, oddly enough, with the success, that I don't know, is it everybody just? It's a beautiful looking film. There's some aspects of it I quite like, but in terms of what they did to the characters, it's appalling. There's Rolando Sada saying, "Howdy, dog. Just bought a moment of y'all." And how you doing, Rolando? And Carlos saying, the way they set it up, Channing will be the one who takes Paul down. Based on events in June. I don't know. She's not who she is. I don't recognize the Chani character at all. They should just call her Zendaya and be done with it, I think. If only the director had said he'd make his Dune instead of Frank Herbert's, it'd be more acceptable. I agree. Not that they've put Frank Herbert's name on it, but I certainly think what Peter Jackson did with The Lord of the Rings is something similar. And I thought that The Lord of the Rings was a pretty good adaptation of the films were very good. I thought the further down they got, the more and more they were getting away from J.R.R. Tolkien's story, and more becoming Peter Jackson's. But to see them when The Hobbit came out, it has Peter Jackson's name on it. I don't like that at all. I don't like saying someone who didn't write a work saying this is mine, even because the medium has changed. It's not Peter Jackson's The Hobbit. It's J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. And at the same time, it's Peter Jackson's film, and no disrespect to him, he's a pretty good filmmaker. But I absolutely hated The Hobbit, and I think I've probably told you that it's the book I like the best, actually, of Tolkien's. I love The Hobbit, and I've read it so many times. I've read The Lord of the Rings. I haven't read these books in years. I've read a bunch of the Tolkien's work. But I was very disappointed in The Hobbit, and thought it could have easily been a single film, And the film is for the non-readers who have heard good things about a novel and want to talk with the readers. Oh, sorry, I've missed a few events here. Oh, sorry, a few comments. Sorry. There's Cynthia saying, hi, Doc. Hi, all. Hi, Cynthia. Sorry, that's what I missed, was Cynthia saying hello. Hello, Cynthia. How you doing? And yeah, I agree. I also have a few problems with that, Rolando, is if it sends young readers to a book that's maybe not that suitable for them. I'd say a good age to start reading Dune is probably about 15. But as you move down the books, they're become a lot more adult. With the 12 certificate, I actually thought some of the violence and stuff in the film was not, some the way Star Wars and things like that work is that if your enemy stormtroopers, they're just faceless plastic guys. It's okay to shoot them and this kind of thing, and the violence doesn't seem real. But there's some quite vicious stabbings in Dune without any blood, which I found quite strange. I have to say, but especially the Baron getting his. I don't know. I'm appalled by what they've done to the characters, and I think it's just pretty disgraceful. To be honest with you, that it's Denis Villeneuve has taken the stage and the setting of someone else's story. He's taken the names of the characters, and then he's just made this stuff up. And I think the whole desire to be faithful, to Frank Herbert's work, I think that's just a load of crap. And to be honest with you, I think he was lying from the start, or else he was deluded. There's a couple of bits in Dune Part 2 I thought were fantastic, but I'll tell you something. It wasn't because they reminded me of Dune; it's because they reminded me of Buck Rogers. Would you believe? But it's I don't know. It's just a bit shame, and they're all, the other thing about it is, you'll get the irony of this, I suppose, is that Dune is being seen as I've seen videos. It's a messiah to cinema. It's saved cinema. Denis Villeneuve is the level of cult of personality, I think, around some Hollywood directors, and also the way he's being, what's the word, fated by the likes of Steven Spielberg and stuff. I kind of like Steven Spielberg's films, but I've never liked his science fiction movies. I didn't mind Minority Report, but I had a lot of issues with it. But I've always thought that Spielberg's science fictions, the word I would use is twee. It's a wee bit twee. But it's I don't know. It's an attempt to appeal to as broad an audience as possible, but it's still putting in certain levels of violence and action, and even, I suppose, there's a degree of sexual fetishization. If that was tricky to say, within the film. That I just thought, if it's going to be a 12, I don't think it's suited a 12. It's an appeal to as broad an audience as possible, and by God, is it dumbed down, But Rolando's saying, it took me a bit to do Dune. I tried at 12 and took till 17. It's a bit to slog through in parts. Though with a phaser, you can get reading at a good clip. Very good. Well, I didn't read it till I was about 25. I think, Bojack saying Close Encounters is good. It is. It's a cracking film, actually, And I remember being that summer kind of thing when I was 4 years old, because we're getting the Star Wars comics and stuff, and all you saw everywhere, it was the Close Encounter poster and the Star Wars poster at the time, something I think back on quite fondly, actually. But I love the Goodies. The Goodies did quite a good spoof of the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Actually, I think they had an R2D2 as a vacuum cleaner for a while, if I can remember correctly. Brad saying, I get why he changed China to promote a modern worldview, but I don't get how you can have a great love from a cynical base. It's ridiculous. I don't see why she needs to be changed to promote a modern worldview, because these characters do not inhabit the modern world. They inhabit a far, far future, and the fact that we can't accept that these people are different, that the Dune universe is not one that you would like to live in, I think, really, it's a nightmarish place, to be honest with you. As much as there's an awful, um, and if we can fact that it is highly feudal, the feudal systems are not good. But oh, I do get it, but it's I don't know. So Brad saying it's not a great story anymore, is it? Paul and Chani, and it's a tragic love story as well. But I think her character is seriously diminished, and to make her a Fade Keen, I think, was quite a bad idea. She has oddly enough, I was listening to some of the Frank Herbert audio files that are available that we posted up on the station. I think I was listening to the 15th one, and I think he was chatting about Chani's place in the Fremen hierarchy, as a being in the religious part of it, heading towards being a Sayadina. And I thought that was quite an interesting way that Frank put it, that her place in the hierarchy. But the other thing is that the way Chani behaves in the book would would most likely have her killed by Stilgar. And if we understand how Jamis behaves, and as much as Jamis invokes the Amtal rule, there's a lot of stuff in the book that this person is questioning Stilgar's authority, and Chani certainly does that. Within the film, and that there's no consequences for her behavior. The horror of writing versus for modern sensibilities. I see. I don't buy into that at all. And I've seen stuff. But it's like saying, one of the worst adaptations I think ever. And again, a very pretty looking shiny film was Wolfgang Petersen's Troy. And if you want to look at the source material, the Iliad and the Odyssey and this kind of stuff, what a load of hooey. It just quite offended me, But I personally think that stories that endure for a particular reason, And whenever we do this kind of thing, I mean, King Arthur's a good example. If you look at Excalibur, we were saying it's my favorite film, but if you look at how that story is portrayed, and look at a whole shebang load of King Arthur films and Excalibur films that are, let's make it a bit modern. Let's take it from this, and it never does them. It always does the story a disservice, and it never does the films any good. If you see what I mean, it's stories that have a how would we put it? Frank might put it like a kind of flow permanence, if you like, and I think Dune is one of them. It's a great story for a great reason, or for a good reason. And I think there's a level of arrogance that says you can rewrite this stuff. And just because you're presenting it in a different medium, and there's all sorts of excuses for cinema, etc., why we would do it. But if we look at the runtime of that film and look at the runtime of the miniseries, then there's no reason why you cannot produce a faithful adaptation of this, for the big screen. But it's about putting as much spectacle, I think, up there, and really just to be entertaining, And I don't think it's. I think a lot of the spectacles, a lot of it's quite stupid and doesn't make any sense at all. So I think the best thing for me to really do is just to watch these, stick the old microphone on here, and just have a good old rant and rave as I watch the films, and stick it up here for you guys to listen to if you fancy it. But we'll do it with part 1 and part 2, and just give you as a commentary if you like, Orlando saying, I thought of Chani as more of a wild reverend mother and the Madonna. Something saying, good stories are bigger than we are, bigger than the times in which we read it. In which we read them. Oops. Yeah, they are. They're bigger than us. They live beyond us. And to some of us, I suppose, to some human beings, us by our work, if you like, if that makes sense. And certainly, I think there's been a level of disrespect to Frank Herbert's work, and especially with Brian Herbert being on board the film, I think that's kind of obvious because I think he's never had any. I don't know if it's the right way to put it, but I don't think he's had respect for his father's work. I think it's been simply a milking machine, that Frank Herbert's Dune series is Brian Herbert's axolotl tank. Something to be milked in a funny way, Carlos Cosella said he loved Helen Mirren in Excalibur. She's brilliant, isn't she, in that film? Was it her and Nicole Williamson had been in a relationship, I think, and that possibly had ended at that time. And kind of the way they feed off each other in that movie is pretty good. And I think she ended up going out with Liam Neeson, who she met in that film for a few years. But yeah, she's really good, and it has that kind of sort of Royal Shakespeare kind of operatic type sensibilities. But it's an example of a beautiful film where character is really important, dialogue's important. And I think actually Excalibur, a lot of the actors in it are operating in the same way, same kind of sensibilities that you get in John Borman's Excalibur that you'll find in David Lynch's Dune, that there's a heightened sense of things, if you like, that and again, when people are on screen, they've got not necessarily a lot, but it's what they do with it, But there's a realism to Excalibur as well, the armor and stuff, and the way the people move and the way they fight, and it's not over the top and it's not gratuitous, but it seems very real. And yet the magic, the earth magic and all of this kind of stuff, it also seems very real, But it's a very, very beautiful film, Brad saying to reject religion should cause ostracism as a pariah in the least for such communities, in my opinion. Ostracism's an interesting thing. Well, for such communities, I suppose, yeah. That's interesting. I suppose within the Dune community, I suppose I'm not really involved in it. Oddly enough, actually, I was thinking about some stuff that because we're a very small channel. I do look at stuff, but I do look at quite a lot of stuff on the Dune community. But I've actually noticed my work being plagiarized a fair bit. By some channel. Well, in particular, some stuff that's been plagiarized by a channel that's got about 100,000 subscribers. And I know it's kind of a done thing when these big channels run out of ideas and they start pinching stuff from people who they think are unknown or not going to get found. But I'm considering an actual response, name and shame, because if it, put it this way, if it was done in my classroom, I would do that. But there you go. But yes, and I suppose before we get cracking with the book club, I'll say it again. Dune is a science fiction book begun writing in the 50s, and it goes all the way through to the 80s. Its author changes and grows as he writes, and has more and more time to consider what he does. And the fact that Frank Herbert spent 5 years really just putting in the time on Dune. And you can see where he's borrowed from all sorts of different things, but to put all of this stuff together, to have his son churning books out every 30 days with the use of modern tech, it's, I suppose the amount of time you put in is the amount of, what you get out of it, I suppose, but it's, but it's my problem with it has been that it's so timely right now. Dune's messages are things that we all consider and talk about here, but they're very timely, and that's what good science fiction does. Is it's always about now, if you like. Frank's, what he's putting together is what he sees in his world at the time, but he's also looking down the road, and all the things that are in Dune are happening in this world at the minute. Our major concerns with artificial intelligence, hydraulic despotism, the environmental destruction, how Western man approaches the environment. And I have to look at Denis Villeneuve as a Western man. That's how I view him. And I really think he didn't get it. And to take the other big problem, I suppose, for me was the Leah Kynes character. That's just some woke bullshit right there. No harm to the actress; she's a very good actress. But that's the one rule I think they shouldn't have gender swapped. And to say we need to gender swap stuff in June, they've obviously got no idea how much that goes on already. But it's done in character names mainly. For example, we've talked about this. Leto is a goddess, not a god. Leto is a woman who gives birth to Artemis and Apollo. She's the mother. She's the divine mother of those two. Excuse me. And even within Otheym, she's Gaius Hel Mohiam, which is a strong nod to both, I suppose Kaiser, and Gaius Julius Kaiser, and Helen of Troy in a bit as well, But there's an awful lot of that already within Dune, and I think they've really missed the point of the book, and I think they've missed so much, and I think their approach to the film, to the characters, was superficial. And I think it takes an awful lot of arrogance to rewrite Frank Herbert. It's as simple as that. Whenever we're doing these book clubs, my main approach is to talk about, because I've done so many different approaches, but I've been focusing on his writing, how he goes about his craft, and I've been enjoying it because he's a good writer. That's the other thing that kind of bothers me about all these kind of mass pumped out paperbacks from different publishers and stuff, is we've got, there doesn't seem to be kind of any respect for the original texts, and if I was making my bread and butter off Dune, I'd want to know why there's so many bloody mistakes in the damn book all these years later, and I would hope that the publishers could sort their crap out, to be honest with you. Sort their shit out, It's But we'll have to have a bit of a good old rant about it. I was actually thinking at some point, folks, as much as I've always got lots of ideas here, but I was thinking I have a little Zoom office at some point. I'm looking to have just a private conversation with the chaps from Jack Hirute, which I was kind of wanting to email them this week. But I was actually thinking on setting up a little, I don't know what you call it, that, because I've never done it, but a little group meeting thing one night, and just invite you all to come in and say hello if you like. As opposed to just constantly being sort of going through text. But which I suppose is a good thing, because I don't hear too well, to be honest with you. Generally in conversations, I'm asking people to repeat themselves, this kind of thing, But I like your point is a good one, Cynthia. Good stories are bigger than we are, bigger than the time in which we read it. And who's to say that people won't be? I actually thought about something like that, by the way. I was thinking that, the way Brian Herbert on Twitter, he's Dune author, is his handle on Twitter, if that's the right term. And I was actually thinking the way things get mixed up throughout history, if you like, throughout time, as time goes on, sometimes authors get confused. I wonder, will people be reading the Dune series in a couple of 100 years, maybe 300 years? I'm thinking it was written by Brian Herbert, who occasionally went by the name Frank, that kind of thing. But it's, I don't know. I think at some point somebody's going to have to compare how Brian Herbert has treated his father's estate and the intellectual property that his father's left behind. And I think the perfect person to compare him to is Christopher Tolkien. Because these Dune and the Lord of the Rings are seen as the pinnacles of, I suppose, high fantasy and what some people would call hard science fiction, if you like. I don't go in with that term, but I would say that Dune sits around the kind of peaks of science fiction, and how the estates have been handled by the sons. I think Christopher Tolkien's approach to his father's work is incredible, and highly respectful. And his work on his father's stuff goes all the way back to writing a review when he was a child, I think, of The Hobbit. But it's very interesting to see how one is a ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Let's milk this money cow, and the other one is let's get my dad's notes. Let's put it together. Let's edit it. tidy it up and get it good up for publication, and particularly with all the linguistic work that's done on the Lord of the Rings, and to present, you know, um, you know, to complete his father's work, but you've no doubt it's his father's work. And Christopher, I think, has done a couple of his own things, but I've certainly read things like the Lays of Beleriand. I haven't read too much outside of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, but I really enjoyed that, and I've often had a wee kind of look at some of the stuff that Christopher Tolkien did, and I was always he's an impressive man, and basically made his own name, I suppose, in doing really good quality work to bring his father's work to, and the more obscure stuff, I suppose there's things like Farmer Giles of Ham, isn't there, and oh goodness, is it the Tale of Luthien and Baron and Luthien? I think I'm not too up on these. I haven't, as I said, I haven't read too many of them, but do know a bit about the process that he went through to bring these books to the public, and it was impressive, and respectful, I think, which I think is quite interesting, But indeed, as we were saying about books, and how they last throughout the ages, and some of us, I read books that are thousands of years old. The oldest book I've got here is probably about 5,000 years old, and it's available in Penguin Classics, and it will, it's and I suppose one other thing I would add is that there's books that I know about that we don't have. That we haven't got a copy of, that they're lost. And interestingly enough, I suppose it's got to the point actually where I'm someone really there's a sock puppet listening in on this channel, and taking things that I say, I must get around to it, and off they go and do it. So I maybe be a wee bit more careful about what I say, what I'm hoping to do. But in particular, Lucian, for example, his mentor, if you like, would be Menopause, and I could probably make a good case for some stuff about Menopause, but we've got none of his work that survives. You see, we simply know about it through other writers, and how influential Menopause is carries all the way through from probably the 1st or 2nd century AD all the way to Jonathan Swift, and all. It still goes on, it's incredible. But we've got nothing left by him, and for those who read, in the ancient Greek world and all, for example, the likes of Aeschylus, the great tragedian. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3. We've got 7 of his plays left, but we know he produced about 80, I think. And all of this stuff's gone, but it might not be gone forever. This is the thing about the ancient world and history, I suppose, is that history is fluid, and ultimately, sometimes stuff from the ancient world re-emerges, sometimes we find it, that these things disappear. Basically, that is what the Renaissance was, is a resurgence of an awful lot of lost work, and for example, I wouldn't have a career without the Renaissance. And without the likes of Menopause and Lucian, it's fascinating, Rolando saying he's got to go. Humble, thanks for your time. No problem, Rolando. Hopefully catch you again soon. I would just back up a wee bit there. Carlos says, and Chris would have made a fortune just fleshing out the stories in the summer, but yeah, he didn't. That's the thing, and I think he had a perfectly good career, Carlos, but it's not a milking machine. It wasn't treated that way. It was, if you see, and the amount of work that, here's me sitting annotating Dune, and that's all I'm doing really. And I'm six really thick notebooks in. And I was sort of saying to my son there, he's saying hello there, Mitch Sloan, the man, he knows so much, and I think he's the best person to listen to and learn from as well. As in my opinion, he puts a lot of effort into these videos. I hope he keeps it up, because I know Doc can do it. Thanks for your time. Thank you, Mitch. That's my son. Oh dear, because I had to do a lot of running around with him there just before we got online. and I was ranting and raving about it, so I apologize, Matt. His name's not Mitch, by the way. Talk about sock puppets. Hope you're keeping all right, son. I hope you take it easy. Put your feet up and relax. You've had a long day. Um, but yeah, he could have easily, with the popularity of the Lord of the Rings, and the histories of Middle Earth. I think I'm sure they've sold plenty. But it's a different kind of work. It's sure as hell. None of those were done in 30 days. I can guarantee you that. He would have put years and years of his life into those. And it's I suppose we've got it in computing. It's garbage in, garbage out, isn't it? At the end of the day, something similar to that. But let me just put my seat up a wee bit. Oh God, I hate this chair. Right, folks. But yeah, it's as much as what Cynthia was saying. Our little epigraph is also about individuals. No matter how exotic the human civilization becomes, no matter what the developments of life and society, the complexity of machine-human interface, it always comes interludes of lonely power. When the course of humankind, the very future of humankind, depends upon the relatively simple actions of single individuals, and it's a very, very true thing. The great leaps in human science and technology are done by individuals usually. We do get some interesting collective efforts, such as the nuclear bomb, for example. But the driving forces out of the ancient world are individuals like Archimedes, Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, people like this, but at the same time, and it's going to be interesting in this chapter because we're kind of going to look at opposites in a funny way, dichotomies. But at the same time, humankind's society, humankind's future is also altered for the worse by individuals. And pardon me, take your pick if you like, but the kings and queens of Britain have sent many, many people to their deaths. Millions and millions of people dead. Hitler, take a look at him, one man's actions and how he was created, if you like. Stalin. Whenever we tend to want leaders, don't we? We want someone to lead us, which I've always found a bit strange because I personally don't like leaders and don't like being led. But these people, whenever you give them power, and this is part of what we talk about in Dune, is that they can cause massive destruction to human society just because of what they believe in. What we can call their golden paths, if you like. But no, it's single individuals can bring death to millions and millions, and there's plenty of examples within human history. Genghis Khan's another. Within the pharaohs, quite a few there. That this kind of thing. Kind of still looking forward to getting to the God Emperor when we can jump into a few of these characters actually and have a look at them. But it's a simple truth. Yeah, humankind's fate, destiny, how we advance is shaped by individuals. And even kind of benevolent things, if you like, can cause massive destruction. If anybody thinks about computer operating systems, for example, software, how do we use software to kill people? How many people has the Microsoft Corporation's technology been used to actually bring death, doom, and destruction to people? And I can guarantee it's an awful lot, which is why I think we tend to see people like Bill Gates, etc. They make their vast wealth, but many lives are lost through these things, even the most benign things. And it's often why if depending on how they feel about it, they tend to go a bit altruistic, some of them, whereas others tend to hide themselves away a little bit. Typhoid Mary, yep, Carlos. Oh, there's all sorts of things. Yeah, excuse me. And it's a shame, but it's not these, as Dune points out, Dune Messiah points out as well. It's not these individuals really. They can't do all this killing by themselves. They have to have other people do it for them. And just like Paul Atreides, how do you kill? You kill through your legions, and your bureaucracies. In particular, and we've pointed out about how IBM's technology was used during World War II. And you've got artificial intelligence being used in a similar way. There was an example of was it 60,000 people in France who had kind of illegally built swimming pools in their homes, all got shopped to the government by one man and his artificial intelligence. And he's made a lot of money. And they're looking into other ways that they can find tax evaders and stuff like this. And I think that that's a good example is that one man has just made 60,000 enemies, And it's exactly what June points out, how one person with a bit of tech can make our lives a misery, I'll give you an example, by the way. The BBC, it's now, because I don't wish to have a TV license from the BBC, it is now illegal for me to watch live television of any kind, regardless of who I subscribe to, what services I subscribe to. If I want to watch live TV, I must pay the BBC. And what they've become is state-sponsored, sort of almost fascist TV, who are pumping out, telling us what we want, what we have to think, and they're not. This particularly the news, but and elsewhere. But that's an affront to free will, for example. And the problem is that the BBC are that used to being state funded, if you like, that everybody in this country has been paying them for a long time. They can't compete in the modern world, and they need the money because they can't really bring in a good income of their own, and they need to grow up, and leave the British people alone. They're parasites. But I can't. The interesting thing is, I'm actually watching myself. With God, it must be such a slight delay, but with the technology, it's almost imperceptible. So I'm actually wondering, is it illegal for me to watch myself as I broadcast this to you live? But I personally don't care. Breaking the law has never been a particular worry of mine, But there we go. So the other wee thing, just at the start of our epigraph, is that this is from the Tleilaxu God book. And that's a little clue, if you like, about the Tleilaxu. And we know very little about them at this point. They're quite a mysterious bunch. They seem to have a very interesting genetics-based technology, if you like, science and technology. But it's an interesting title, the Tleilaxu God book. So there we go. So let's get cracking, folks. Goodness, we've done 40 minutes on an intro. That's not... But oh, why not? It's all good crack, isn't it, as they say here. So here we go, folks. Paul, first of all, got Paul. Now, as he crossed over the high footbridge from his keep to the Qizarate office building, Paul added a limp to his walk. It was almost sunset, and he walked through long shadows that helped conceal him. But sharp eyes still might detect something in his carriage that identified him. He wore a shield, but it was not activated, his aides having decided that the shimmer of it might arouse suspicion. So we have Paul basically in almost sort of in disguise, if you like, and walking amongst his people as a few kind of emperors have done in the past. Paul glanced to the left. Strings of sand clouds lay across the sunset like slatted shutters. The air was fiery dry through his stillsuit filters. That's gorgeous writing there, isn't it? Super sibilant and very alliterative. I quite liked it. I've got a couple of wee moments like that in this chapter, sorry. Strings of sand clouds lay across the sunset like slatted shutters. Like closing the windows on the day, if you like. And it is almost sunset. So the web of security is what this next bit's about. He wasn't really alone out here, but the web of security hadn't been this loose around him since he had ceased walking the streets alone in the night. Ornithopters with night scanners drifted far overhead in seemingly random pattern, all of them tied to his movements through a transmitter concealed in his clothing. picked men walked the streets below. Others had fanned out through the city after seeing the emperor in disguise, Fremen costume down to the stillsuit and Temag desert boots, the darkened features. Sorry, let me just check that. I've got a couple of possible wee kind of type here in this as well. Let me just see. Others found out through the city and seeing the emperor in his disguise, Fremen costume down to the stillsuit and Temag desert boots, the darkened features. Temag is the word that I had a lot of bother with, folks. I don't know if anybody's got any kind of ideas from other languages that you all. I know a fair amount of you speak different languages. I was all over the place with this. Oh, gotta watch that date. Oh, here, hang on. Nearly lost you there, folks. Phew, that was close. Let me see. The Temagami myth, etc. I was searching for Temag and I ended up all over the place, as I was telling you, and the only kind of thing that I really could get was Temagami. And I wasted I wouldn't say wasted, but I spent 4 hours on this word the other night, and it took me all over the place. Temag, and I wasn't too sure. Temagami, formerly spelled Temagami, is a municipality in northeastern Ontario, Canada, in the Nipissing district, with Lake Temagami at its heart. Temagami region is known as the Nadaki men and the homeland of the area's First Nations community, most of whom are Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, living on Bear Island. The official name for this group is the Temagami First Nation. However, a larger group that includes these people plus non-status residents and some residents called the Temi-Ogame Anishinaabe. If I'm probably not pronouncing those correctly. Goodness, this is where it took me all over the place. It says some of the main tourist attractions within the community include old growth red and white pine, Lake Temagami, Caribou Mountain, fishing showings of grey owl from the 1930s, and over 4,000 kilometers of canoe routes. So I know Frank Herbert's got a bit of an affiliation with the North American Indian people, or North American natives, if that's the correct way of putting it. I often see the word Indian here on their own kind of website, so I don't think it's offensive to them. Well, I wouldn't know. But I'd actually found stuff about Grey Owl. I think some of his writings had found the word Temag kind of highlighted in there in a search, and then I ended up all over. I wrote their name down actually here because I ended up going through a whole pile of Meskwaki kind of dictionaries and things like that, because I'd found something similar, but I ended up not getting a meaning for it at all. I was having a wee look at Grey Owl. Actually, I remember him. I think Pierce Brosnan was in a film about him. He's kind of an interesting chap, isn't he? There's Joseph Smith saying howdy. So I don't know. Temag is a word that, unless it doesn't really fit to desert bits, if you see what I mean. I was even kind of running the word backwards and stuff, but that didn't really make any sense to me either. So, pardon me, if anybody's got any ideas about that one, let me know. But it's not often a word defeats us, and maybe we'll get it later. As I said, Irulan had defeated us for quite some time, and then I reversed it and got a Naluri, which I think is a Malay word, and had a perfect meaning in relation to her character. So I do all sorts of things when I'm trying to figure out what these words mean, including standing on my head. But I have to say, I found, by the way, just if anybody is into this kind of thing, let me just bring them up here. I found these people fascinating. So I was trawling through all sorts of stuff, and they seem to have quite a good few resources on the web. But basically, I was looking at the Meskwaki, sometimes spelled Meskwaki, also known by the European exonyms as the Fox Indians or the Fox, are a Native American people. They've been closely linked to the Sauk people of the same language family. In the Meskwaki language, the Meskwaki call themselves Meshkwaki Haki, which means the red earths and is related to their creation story. I've got no reference on that, so it could be a load of hooey. I think that other tribe is pronounced Sak, actually, or Sok. Um, it goes on about their culture heroes of Osaka created the first humans out of red clay. But I had kind of picked up that just through the word Temag appearing in some stuff to do with them. And off I went, hunting and going through all sorts of dictionaries and so on and so forth. I discovered that these languages of the Sak and the Meskwaki and the Kickapoo belong to the Algonquian, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, languages. Goodness, so I was looking at all of this stuff, and I ended up reading an awful lot about these people I thought were very interesting. I suppose the kind of sad thing about it is it says here that by 1910, the Sac and Meskwaki together totaled only about 1,000 people. During the 20th century, they began to recover their cultures, and it says here by the year 2000, their numbers had increased to nearly 4,000. The citation needed. And then just a wee note about this in World War II, Meskwaki men enlisted in the United States Army, and several served as code talkers, along with Navajo and some other speakers of uncommon languages. Meskwaki men used their language to keep Allied communications secret in actions against the Germans in North Africa. 27 Meskwaki men, then 16% of the Meskwaki population in Iowa enlisted together in the United States Army in January 1941. I think there's a film about that as well, isn't there? And some notable people there, for example, from the tribe. But I thought it was very interesting, and it took me all over the place linguistically and I suppose culturally. Fascinating, you know. And I'm just sad to hear that there's so few of these people left, you know. I think that's always a real shame. So I've got nothing on Temag, folks, unless it's something to do with Temagami. And who knows, it could be. But I'm open to suggestions. But it's the sort of thing I'm kind of going to go back and look at some of that stuff. But I'll keep at it and see if I can find a meaning. But there's not. I think there's hardly any words that get by us in this book, to be honest. So that's the first one. No. As I said, there is an association with the North American Indian people there, and we know that Frank's quite heavily into that kind of thing, you know. So the opposite end of Paul says as he reached the sorry, he doesn't say anything here. Sorry, it's me. As he reached the opposite end of the bridge, Paul glanced back, noted a movement beside the stone lattice that concealed a balcony of his private quarters. Chani, no doubt. Hunting for sand in the desert, she'd called this. Yeah, could be. Yeah, it could also be like possibly a Brian Herbert book, Hunting for Sand in June. She called this Venture. And Paul's thoughts here are how little she understood the bitter choice, selecting among agonies, he thought, that made even lesser agonies near unbearable. Unbearable. Hang on a wee second. Have I scribbled that? Yeah, it's my handwriting. Could possibly be unbearable. Where's my pen? Oh, we'll grab another one here. But goodness, I wish my handwriting was neater. Unbearable. There you go. I'll read that again. How little she understood the bitter choice. Selecting among agonies made even lesser agonies near unbearable. I suppose how little she understands, because he's not really explaining it to her. He's keeping her in the dark, isn't he? We get a little bit here about Paul and Chani's parting now. For a blurred, emotionally painful moment, he relived their parting. At the last instant, Chani had experienced a tau glimpse of his feelings, but she had misinterpreted. She had thought his emotions were those experienced in the parting of loved ones when one entered the dangerous unknown. And Paul's thoughts here, would that I did know. Yeah, I kind of get that, I suppose. the last kind of big holiday myself, my wife, and my son had, I took quite ill on the last day, just about to get on the bus, and I had to send them on. Um, Basically, whenever I get this little thing that I have, I look like a plague victim. I start sweating, and it's ridiculous, and start shaking very badly and get rigor attacks. And it takes me about 12 hours to get over it, and I usually have to go and stand in a shower for about 4 or 5 hours to regulate my body temperature. Um, and I had to send my wife and son on his go. You'll have to go without me, and that was a really horrible thing. And they're worried about me, and I'm knowing it's the best thing. Otherwise, you need to get home, or else we'll all miss our flights, and I'll stay here. I'll get myself home, and then with my wife's help, had to get arranged other flights and stuff for me the next day once I was better, and I managed to get home and be sick again. But it's that kind of parting of loved ones when one enters a dangerous unknown. I can relate to it, and I'm sure that she's not happy and that she's full of worry, this kind of thing. But this is her misinterpreting what Paul's feeling. Actually, sorry, that she thinks that's what he's feeling, and he probably should be feeling that as well. But word that I did know, and he does know. So here we go, a little bit of traveling here. He had crossed the bridge now and entered the upper passageway through the office building. There were fixed glow globes here and people hurrying on business. The Qizarate never slept. It's a bit ominous, isn't it? Paul found his attention caught by the signs above doorways, as though he were seeing them for the first time. So these are all the different kind of shops that are around here, if you like, and their signs. We see speed merchants, whatever that means, wind stills and retorts, prophetic prospects, tests of faith, religious supply, weaponry, propagation of the faith. And we get Paul's thoughts here. A more honest label would have been propagation of the bureaucracy, he thought. And I thought that's quite interesting. A retort, by the way, I looked this up. I didn't know this one. So a retort is a container or furnace for carrying out a chemical process on a larger industrial scale. That's possibly that here, but is also on a smaller scale, a glass container with a long neck used in distilling liquids and other chemical operations. So there you go, got that off the dictionary. That's what a retort is. And a more honest label would have been propagation of the bureaucracy. I suppose these things ultimately are not far away from Alia's Fane, if you like. There's a couple of places in Belfast like this. There's a church on one side of the street, and immediately, about 10 feet on the other side of the street, maybe 20 feet, is a little shop selling all sorts of religious icons and this, that, and the other, and holy water, and you name it. And it's religion with business hand in hand. I always thought it was quite interesting. When anybody's been to Amsterdam, if you hit the red light district, you actually see, is it like near the old Kirk and stuff, the old churches, and then just up there's a prostitutes in the window, and sitting, prostitution and religion all right next door to each other. Cynthia saying, I wonder if Paul's attention to detail here is a response to the care the face dancer took with Lichnia. Skytail raised the bar even for the Emperor. That's a good point. Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing what you're saying there, Cynthia. What we're kind of, I suppose, what does it say here? He found his attention caught by the signs above doorways, as though he were seeing them for the first time. I suppose the suggestion is that he's not. But it's, I suppose, with vision in this, it's the attention to detail, having a look around him, etc. He's moving amongst his people in a way that he wouldn't normally, I think. And I think Paul's going to see from a different viewpoint here. But I suppose the point is knowing that there's a face dancer about, and all about this plot is that going out here, there could be plenty more of them, plenty of opportunities to kill the Emperor just in the middle of a crowd, And it's an interesting thing. Often when a king or an emperor goes out amongst his people in disguise, this kind of thing, and it's often possible, to see how the other half live. This kind of thing, get a certain viewpoint, and there's quite a good few examples of this in history. But yeah, it's his attention to detail. Get a little discussion here now from Frank. On, I suppose, a new type of religious servant. This is about the new men of the Qizarate. So we're told a type of religious servant had sprung up all through the universe. This new man of the Qizarate was more often a convert. He seldom displaced a friend in the key posts, but he was filling all the interstices. He used melange as much to show he could afford it as for the geriatric benefits. He stood apart from his rulers, emperor, guild, Bene Gesserit, Landsraad, family, or Qizarate. His gods were routine and records. He was served by mentats and prodigious filing systems. Expediency was the first word in his catechism. Although he gave proper lip service to the precepts of the Butlerians, machines could not be fashioned in the image of a man's mind, he said, but he betrayed by every action that he preferred machines to men, statistics to individuals, the faraway general view to the intimate personal touch, requiring imagination and initiative. I rather cheekily thought that he was describing Denis Villeneuve there. If you see what I mean. Machines demand it's the technology over the characters, this kind of statistics, the faraway general view, as opposed to the intimate personal touch requiring imagination and initiative. It almost describes Dune Part 1 and 2 perfectly, doesn't it? Maybe that's just me. A few words here for you in case you're not familiar with them. Interstices are I suppose the definition would be an intervening space, usually a small one, a small kind of like a cubby hole between rooms, this kind of thing perhaps. From the Latin inter, which means between, and sisterity, which is to stand. So precepts are, how would we put this? A precept's a writ or a warrant or a rule that should be used to regulate behavior and thinking, something that should warn people or instruct them, coming from the Latin pre, which is before, and capere, which is to take. And a catechism, by the way, is a word, I suppose, which doesn't really mean what it's supposed to mean anymore, but it's kind of what I do. Catechism is from the Greek word which means to teach orally. But with more, I suppose, modern day meaning would be kind of doctrine, I suppose, dogma, this kind of thing. I have a question about punctuation here, just in relation to this. Where did we go? I wasn't too sure about it. Number 8. Let me just see. Individuals. But he betrayed by every action that he preferred machines to men, comma, statistics to individuals. And then I have no punctuation there at all. The faraway general view to the intimate personal touch requiring imagination and initiative. And there needs to be something there. I don't know if any of you have it. I would imagine another comma after the word individuals, or even a full stop, but I have no capital T. But statistics to just doesn't flow right. But he betrayed by every action that he preferred machines to men, statistics to individuals, the faraway general view to the initiative, intimate personal touch, requiring imagination and initiative. That's how it reads without correct punctuation, which is not right. So I'm wondering, has anybody got a comma or a full stop after individuals there? Excuse me. But I've made a wee note just saying I think there should be punctuation there. Let me get my wee bookmark there. Excuse me a wee second, folks. I'll just get some of those precious fluids. Oh, it's a bit funky. Cynthia said, yes, I have a comma. Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, I have a comma after the phrase statistics to individuals. Makes sense. I'm just going to put that in there, and I'm going to go to the book and put it in. That's one of the things that we're annotating the hell out of this. But I do get annoyed when punctuation's missing, because it really does change how you read things. There we go. Little things are important. Not to be too anal about it, as if I'm not anal enough about this. Thank you very much, Cynthia. So we're told as Paul emerged into the ramp at the far side of the building, he heard the bells calling the evening rite at Alia's Fane. Excuse me. Hello, Holly. There was an odd feeling of permanence about the bells. Now, the temple across the thronged square was new, its rituals of recent devising, but there was something about the setting in a desert sink at the edge of Arrakeen, something in the way wind-driven sand had begun to weather stones and plastine, something in the haphazard way buildings had gone up around the Fane. Everything conspired to produce the impression that this was a very old place, full of tradition and mystery. And I like that it's conspired to produce the impression, that it's been deliberately done this way, where in fact everything's ultra modern, to give a sense of age, to give a sense of continuity over time, perhaps. So let's see, Paul. Let's see. Here's Paul now. He was down into the press of the people now, committed. And I think we get a wee bit of a transition here with Paul. By the way, I'll have a wee chat about it whenever I think it's there. But in part, going over the bridge, etc., this kind of thing. But this is him committing to things now. I think the only guide his security force could find had insisted it be done this way. Security hadn't liked Paul's ready agreement. Stilgar had liked it even less. And Chani had objected most of all. There you go. And we always get this sense that Chani cares for Paul, fears for Paul. And I'm sure she's not too happy with him at this point, but you still get this idea that you won't get in Dune, Denis Villeneuve's Dune, is that this woman loves him, cares for him, worries for him. The crowd around him, even while its members brushed against him, glanced his way unseeing and passed on, gave him a curious freedom of movement. It was the way they'd been conditioned to treat a Fremen he knew. He carried himself like a man of the inner desert. Such men were quick to anger. And I made a wee note that Paul's usually quick to anger. As he moved into the quickening steps, the crush of people became even greater. Those all around could not help but press against him now, but he found himself the target for ritual apologies. Your pardon, noble sir, I cannot prevent this discourtesy. Pardon, sir, this crush of people is the worst I have ever seen. I abase myself, holy citizen. A lout shoved me. Holly, ooh, hello. Sorry, getting barked out there. Are you all right, pet? Bear with me a wee second. What's up? Come on. Have a seat if you want. Go on. Over there. Are you going to bark at me? Sorry about this. You alright? There we go. Hello. Oh yeah, you're just looking a bit of love. I'll just pet her here. Hopefully she'll not bark too much, folks. Where did we get to here? Yes, committed. Oh yes. I base myself, holy citizen, a lout, shove me. I love the word lout. You don't hear it too often. It's always thugs and this kind of thing, but someone being a bit loutish. It's a good word. Paul ignored the words after the first few. There was no feeling in them except a kind of ritual fear. He found himself instead thinking that he had come a long way from his boyhood days in Caladan Castle. Where had he put his foot on the path that led to this journey across a crowded square on a planet so far from Caladan. Had he really put his foot on the path? And I suppose, they're good questions, aren't they? I think we're at the point where you off. G'd out. Sorry, give us a wee second, folks. G'd out, big love. You just play it on. Sorry about that, folks. I thought she needed out. The back door's open and everything, so she's just coming in to say hello. But she likes using her voice. Apologies. Where were we? Yes, where had he put his foot on the path that led to this journey across a crowded square on a planet so far from Caladan? Had he really put his foot on the path? It's a good question. And I suppose it's him questioning free will, really. How's he got here? From good old Caladan Castle all the way across the universe to this desert planet and being emperor. And that's where we've got actually over the space of probably 15 years, and it's an interesting thing. It's something I used to ask myself, I suppose. How the hell did I get here? In terms of where I set out to be, in life and where I ended up. And, you got to ask yourself sometimes, what the hell's going on? How did this happen? It's something that's I can relate to a bit. Not that I've become emperor of the universe, but just I kind of wondered how things happened, and just why did they happen. And, my wife put it to me that it's all perfectly normal, Russell, but you just interesting the way she put it was that I didn't factor death into my life, if you see what I mean, and how it affected my life and how things changed. I just think it's interesting. And whenever we do look at books like look at any book really, I suppose. Odd enough, I was saying to you, I was listening to, I think, number 15 there the other day of the Frank Herbert audio tapes that we put up, really. And I think it's a good one to listen to. It discusses a number of things. But in particular, the conversation went about how different readers, different people who read a book, and even himself as a reader, as opposed to being an author, because he reads his own work, how different readers bring different things to the party, if you see what I mean. How we all relate to stories through our own lives and our own experiences. And I've always thought Dune's quite an interesting one for me. But I would do that with almost any book, I suppose. And I think one of the things I told you about myself is particularly the ancient world, where we're talking about this desire to make stuff for a modern audience. There's not going to be too many classicists around for long if that's the case, to dip into books from the ancient world, particularly, we're going to be hitting some interesting stuff from the Old Testament and the Hebrew Bible in a minute or two. To dip yourself into these worlds, and to understand this stuff, if you like, to grok it in fullness, as Mr. Heinlein would put it, you have to be able to sometimes put yourself into these cultures, to wonder what it would be like to live there, to exercise a bit of your imagination. And for me, I can read Roman books as a Roman, if you like. And to me, I can read Greek books probably more as an Athenian than any other. But I understand those societies, and I understand what's going on in them at the time and how the people think, if you see what I mean. And I would have no desire to change these books to make them palpable or not palpable, sorry, to make them palatable. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for modern audiences, because then what the hell do you learn from them? If you see what I mean. As you make it the thing like this where it is like it is now, then there's no journey, there's no growth, there's no development, and it's harder to see how these things, what they bring to your own modern day world cultures, Um, but it's very difficult for me to go. Anytime I see a column, for example, I go, "Oh God, neoclassical." Hard for me not to see the ancient world in the modern, in today. It's everywhere. Um, yeah, but had he really put his foot on the path? And we kind of know that there's plans within plans within plans. He's part of a breeding program. That just didn't go exactly the way it was supposed to. And did he put his foot on this path? Did he do this willingly? Um, or is it all because he was a duke's son? And again, remember the nature of the five for like system is if your daddy's a duke, you'll be a duke. Um, which kind which kind of makes the opening of Dune Part Two a load of hooey as well, where Leto Atreides is telling his son, if you don't want to be a duke, that's okay with me. And it's no, it's not in that universe. Um, I think Yeah. So he could not say that he acted at any point in his life for one specific reason. The motives and impinging forces have been complex, more complex possibly than any other set of goads in human history. That's a good word, goads, prods, this kind of thing. Um, it's a little bit hyperbolic, isn't it? He had the heady feeling that he might still avoid the fate he could see so clearly along this path. But the crowd pushed him forward, and he experienced the dizzy sense that he had lost his way, lost personal direction over his life. Now, there's some good stuff there, and it really does sort of give us an insight into Paul a little bit here. And once again, as much as we've been looking at him in the last couple of chapters and thinking, Paul's being a bit of a dick here, basically, especially to Chani, our sympathies are getting developed here a little bit more for him. And the case of, and this is the real problem with Paul Atreides, isn't it? Is the free will thing. Does he have a choice at all? And ultimately, is what he doing such a supreme sacrifice? If you see what I mean. The end goal is to save humanity, and that he's prepared to sacrifice everything, including Chani, to make sure that happens. But does he have any choice? And this is back to we're heading into the Oedipus stuff here again. He could not say that he acted at any point in his life for one specific reason. I did this because of that, etc., etc. The motives have been complex, more complex possibly than any other set of goads in human history. But he had the heady feeling here that he might still avoid the fate. It's that word there again, I suppose. Fate. Fate, destiny, doom, weird. Take your pick. They're all the same thing. And they have a strong indication, I suppose, when we talk about fate and destiny, that there is no free will, if you like, that you're destined to do something. It's all predetermined. And that's, again, who's writing this? We're not too sure. The epigraph is Taiaxu. Especially if we looked at the previous chapter, went with Skytail, like if you like, the idea that was presented really by Skytail earlier, that you get the sense that they're trying to guide Paul down a particular path. We have to question: is that the golden path? Is it a golden path? Is it a Taiaxu golden path? Who knows? And it's still up for question, I think. But as I say, they're all that good fate, that heady feeling, that I might still avoid the fate that he could see so clearly along this path. But he gets jostled along and pushed forward. and that dizzy sense that he had lost, and he experienced the dizzy sense that he had lost his way, lost personal direction over his life. So again, we have that kind of juxtaposition. Oh, I might just get out. I might just get out of this. Might just be able to avoid this terrible, terrible thing that I can see right down the road, but probably not. I've lost my way. How did this happen? This kind of thing. The crowd flowed with him up the steps now into the temple portico. Voices grew hushed. The smell of fear grew stronger, acrid, sweaty. Acolytes had already begun the service within the temple. Their plain chant dominated the other sounds: whispers, rustle of garments, shuffling feet, coughs, telling the story of the far places visited by the priestess in her holy trance. So here are the far places visited by Alia, if you like. This is the story that they tell. She rides the sandworms of space. She guides through all storms into the land of gentle winds. Though we sleep by the snake's den, she guards our dreaming souls. Shunning the desert heat, she hides us in a cool hollow. The gleaming of her white teeth guides us in the night. By the braids of her hair, we are lifted up to heaven. Sweet fragrance, flower-scented, surrounds us in her presence. That's pretty good. I really like that. These are the positive things of Alia, if you like, the benevolence of the religious Alia. Quite like the idea of riding sandworms through space, if you like. Guides, so she's a guide in the storms into the land of gentle winds. Even if we slept by a snake's den, she guards our dreaming souls. Shunning the desert heat, she hides us in a cool hollow. The gleaming of her white teeth, believe it or not, is what guides them in the night. And by the braids of her hair, we are uplifted to heaven. Sweet fragrance, flower-scented, surrounds us in her presence. That's a very good wee bit of writing. I like it. And here's Paul's thoughts here. Balak, Paul thought, thinking in Fremen. Look out! She can be filled with angry passion too. Got a whole lot of bangeria going on in this chapter, by the way. Doesn't seem to bother Frank. Now, that's an interesting response. Balak, Paul thought, thinking in Fremen. Look out! She can be filled with angry passion too. And we're going to get that in a moment or two with another kind of little song, if you like, another chant. Now, Balak in the Hebrew would be Balaq, I believe, is a king of Moab from the Hebrew Bible, if you like. And he's kind of an interesting chap. King of Moab, the son of Zippor. And for anybody who wants to check out this story, you can, in the Old Testament, the book of Numbers, chapters 22 to chapter 24, and especially chapter 23:11. The book of Judges, chapter 11, verse 25, and the book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 5. You will get stuff on Balak. I believe there's, I'm not 100% sure because I didn't check this one out, but the book of Revelations 2:12 to 2:14 also refers to Balak. Now, I know this guy, well, I suppose I read my Bible a long time ago, with the story of Balaam and the angel. The angel in question, I believe, is a Satan, an adversary sent by God. Now, if you have a wee look about that, ultimately, I suppose the story is about, and I think, by the way, the word Balak can mean to waste or to lay waste, but it's to do with wanting something cursed and end up getting it blessed, if that makes sense. But I've got something here I've written down I should read to you, so I'm going to bring it up on Wikipedia. And this is to do with, now I don't really know much about this stuff at all. This is from the Zohar, which apparently means splendor or radiance, and I'm told is the foundational work of Kabbalistic literature, which I know very little about at all. I understand it's a sort of form of Jewish mysticism, if that might be correct. But let's go find this. Bear with me a wee second. Because I made a wee note here. Just read, see the mesh of steel. That's EMSHASTELE, and also see Wikipedia. Oh, I've just landed on Wikipedia, and today's featured article is about one of my favorites, Kurt Vonnegut. But anyway, we'll not jump down there. Let's just bring this up. Balak, the biblical character. If you want to have a look at that on Wikipedia, you can see all sorts of stuff there. But if you jump down to the, you'll see a section in the contents entitled the Zohar. So I'm just going to read to you what it says here. Save me having to scribble all this out the other night. So it says the Zohar is the basic text of the Kabbalah and offers a special interpretation to the Balak being the son of Zippor. Now there's a reference at the bottom of this, so let's go with it. In Hebrew, it says Zippor means bird. And according to the Zohar, this was not the name of Balak's father, but rather referred to a magical metal bird which Balak made use of. As the Zohar recounts, such a bird has a head made of gold, a mouth made of silver and wings, made of copper mixed with silver, and its body is made of gold. Once the bird is made, it should be put during the day in a window facing the sun, and during the night in a window facing the moon, while burning incense in front of it for 7 days and 7 nights. Thereupon the bird would start talking and foretelling of what is about to happen. Only the most skilled of wizards could construct such a bird. Balak, the greatest wizard of his age, managed it. The bird was always sitting on Balak's shoulder and whispering in his ear, and therefore he was nicknamed Son of the Bird. The Zohar further recounts that the bird spoke true words of prophecy in Balak's ear and warned him not to set himself against the sons of Israel, and also foretold of the harsh punishment in store for himself and for the Moabites. Nevertheless, Balak persisted in his wrong way and was punished exactly as the bird foretold. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because we have another kind of oracle, if you like, within this magical bird. So the suggestion is that Balak is not the son. Balak, king of Moab, is not the son of Zippor, but rather that he was known by this title because of the magic bird that sat on his shoulder and whispered prophecy into his ear, if you like. It's kind of interesting. My dad's Jack Russell, our Bonnie, who passed away just after he did. It's quite a large Jack Russell. Would you believe, used to climb up onto my shoulder and sit there like a parrot, all four legs, like in one little thing on my shoulder, a full-grown Jack Russell, and would just sit and lick my bald spot for hours and be quite content. And it used, the weight of her on my shoulder used to kill me, but kind of reminded me of our Miss Bo Woofity, if you like. But I thought that was really fascinating. All sorts of stuff. Moab is a kingdom, I suppose, that was subsumed by the Roman Empire. Bye-bye, that's them away. Where would Moab be? Moab is modern day, probably southern Jordan, around there would be the kingdom of the Moabites. Yeah, interesting bunch. And the story, that was the other thing, the story of Balaam and the angel, wasn't it? That was what I was thinking of, which is kind of an interesting story, but it actually got me thinking, wasn't there a band called Balaam and the Angel? They were, yeah, I'm not high. I was quite high. Yeah, for anybody, goodness, I remember hearing some of their stuff probably in the early 90s. Somebody I knew must have been into them. Balaam and the Angel, a Scottish rock band founded by Mark, Jim and Desmond Morris in Cannock, England in 1984. The Morris brothers, let's see. EP and played some dates opening for the Cult. That's probably that kind of thing. I thought with a kind of gothic-y kind of thing. Caught the attention of Virgin Records, who signed them and released their debut album, The Greatest Story Ever Told. Peaked at number 67 UK album charts in August 1986. Toured in the United States with The Mission, Kiss, and label mate Iggy Pop. Citation needed. The band began, let's see. Second guitarist, first non-sitting 20 Flight Rockers, was added to the band in 1988, and the band began to move away from gothic rock music styles into a sound that had more in common with hard rock. Their song I'll Show You will appear on the track for the film Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Wonder are they still playing? 2019, there is an album out. But yeah, I remember. That was the thing that popped into my head. God, isn't there? Yeah, just looking at Balak and then Balaam and the Angel, and then I was going, because I used to love, well, I still do. I love gothic rock. Gothic rock music, Sisters of Mercy and The Mission and all that kind of thing. Fields of the Nebula. Balaam and the Angel, yeah. Well, they've got all very religious names, don't they? But yeah, one of my favorite bands would be the Sisters of Mercy. I absolutely love them. So there we go. In relation to Balak, look out, she can be filled with angry passion too. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. I do apologise. These things are usually out of this room. Sorry, I was in such a hurry to get in here tonight. God, that's terrible of me, isn't it? There we go. But anyway, yeah, it's quite some interesting stuff in relation to what Paul's saying. It's really about cursing, curses and blessing, to curse someone and to bless them, I suppose. And as much as what we have here are the blessings of Alia, we'll be getting the kind of cursings of Alia, if you like. And so that's what I think very much that reference is there to. So let's see. The temple portico was lined with tall, slender glow globes, simulating a candle flame. They flickered. The flickering stirred ancestral memories in Paul, even while he knew that was the intent. The setting was an atavism, subtly contrived, effective. He hated his own hand in it. Now, let me see. Atavism is a word I will use quite a lot in relation to Northern Ireland and actually to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The United Kingdom is what I call a atavistically retarded country, and Northern Ireland in particular is atavistically retarded. And what I mean, and I mean those words in the non-pejorative senses. I'm sure you've heard me say this before. So atavism is basically to be like your grandfather or your ancestors, if you like. It comes from the Latin word avis, which is the word for grandfather. And atavis is really, if you put the at in front of avis, if you like, it kind of means beyond grandfather, if you like, if you were to translate it literally. But the word atavis is Latin word for your ancestors, if you like. But so atavism is kind of to be like your grandfathers or your ancestors in that sense. That's a big thing in this country, for example, with all our, things like the Orange Order, etc., and the marching bands and so on. These people dress up in military uniforms, usually, and they march and stuff, and they kind of take on the attributes and banners of soldiers who fought in a battle 300, 400 years ago. 17, call it 330 years ago, roughly. And that's this is how they kind of behave. And I've often pointed out there's a lot to do with Ireland and Northern Ireland within the Dune series. And especially within relation to this kind of atavism. And if you look at what ultimately, whenever we get to the God Emperor, you'll see what happens to the Fremen, and it's something very similar to what we have here in this country. So atavism is kind of where you're retarding your own development, if you like. You're trying to act and behave in a manner like your ancestors rather than moving forward in time, if you like. Now, in biology, atavism is I've actually written down the quotation here, just the definition. So is reversion by influence of heredity to ancestral characteristics, resemblance of a given organism to some remote ancestor, or return to an early or original type. And I've also got here, it's a very interesting word, isn't it? See also the work of Cesare Lombroso. Is that Lombroso? Lombroso, no, that's correct. Whose real name, by the way, is Ezekiel Marco Lombroso. His dates are the 6th of November, 1835 to the 19th of October, 1909. And he's an Italian eugenicist and arguably the father of kind of modern criminology, if you like. He's the guy that you'll hear came up with the idea, and again, in terms of atavism, we'll explain this, that criminality is inherited. That if you're likely to be born a criminal, and this idea, I suppose, if you're born a criminal, confirmed that criminals were savages or atavistic, if you like. So check him out if you're interested in atavism. I've written down Northern Ireland retarded atavism. Based on that, by the way, now I can't remember the name of the story, but that idea was explored brilliantly in a Judge Dredd episode a long time ago. And it's one of the most brutal things I've ever read. And basically, occasionally, just to get a sense of what Judge Dredd can be like sometimes, occasionally Judge Dredd gets sent into primary schools, if you like, juve schools, usually to actually get the kids to inform on their parents, this kind of thing. Occasionally they also grab certain kids who will end up being taken away to become judges. But there's a particular episode of where those kind of things, those ideas were well established within the Judge Dredd's world of Mega City 1, if you like. And it's Judge Dredd basically comes to this, for want of a better word, a primary school. And I don't have all of these comics anymore, but I can easily remember the stories. Basically, he picks out a little kid from the class, come with me, son, and off you go. And he basically on the bike with Judge Dredd, and off they go to the Hall of Justice. And the little kid thinks he's been chosen to be a judge, because I think they enroll them at the age of 5 or something like this. And the whole process, I think the story is all the thoughts of what's going through this kid's mind, and Judge Dredd basically explains to him, your daddy's a criminal, your mom's a criminal, your grandfather's a criminal. Justice Department computer says that there's a 99.9% chance of you turning into a criminal. And so the kid kind of goes, you mean I'm not going to be a judge? And he goes, no, son, we're taking you to be lobotomized. And they take this little kid off to lobotomize him so he won't, won't become a criminal just like the rest of his family. And that's that idea of inherited criminality. And it's the way 2000 AD and its Judge Dredd writers could handle topics like that is incredible, because it's possibly one of the most brutal stories I've ever read. And at the same time, you kind of have a because Judge Dredd has such a dark humor about it. And it's in stark contrast to Dredd's later behavior and things like the Bonnie Crickle case, stuff like that. But I just thought I would mention it if anybody ever. I wish I could tell you. I must dig out. I must try to get some kind of a reference system for Judge Dredd stories in 2080, so I could actually point you to where you can find them. But a lot of these are being kind of re-released in the Dredd files and stuff. You can buy them as graphic novels these days, Let's see. Something saying yes, I'm back way up. Carlos Crescella says we have people who recreate battles from the Civil War here in the South. Yeah, it's not quite the same thing. I get recreation and stuff like that, and people enacting historic battles and dressing up. There's a fair amount of that here too. No, it's a different thing. And it's part of the Troubles as well, Carlos. It's about us and them, and their ancestors won. And it's about often these parades go past, it'd be Protestant parades going past Catholic areas, and they would behave quite badly towards the people there. But it's all about our ancestors killed your ancestors, and now that's why Northern Ireland's a Protestant country. This kind of nonsense, So that there's some appalling behaviour associated with it. But it's generally associated with loutishness and thuggishness, if you like, and ultimately as a Christian death cult. They tend to claim that they're a religious group, if you like, but there's all sorts to this. Is kind of to do with William of Orange, by the way, in particular, but there's all sorts of people who parade here. And unfortunately, because of the relationship to the churches, and then the churches have a relationship to the youth organizations like the Scouts and the BB and stuff like that, is that they end up parading with them too. Which is it's the reason why we pulled our son out of the Scouts in this company, because they end up, who the hell are you marching with? Who the hell are we'll not be marching with them anymore if that's what the Scouts do. Which is kind of sad. In fact, when I was a kid, I suppose I was in the boys' brigade, and for a while, and it's around the time I stopped believing in Christianity, etc. And that was it. They didn't want to know me and out I went. It's one of them kind of things. So it's an unfortunate thing that a lot of kids get involved in these kind of activities, because they're meant to be something like, the Scouts, this kind of thing. But ultimately, it's just a way of getting you in the door so they can start doing the Bible verse and stuff like that. So then they'll tell you can't attend these organizations. Well, this is when I was young anyway, unless you went to the Sunday school at the church, this kind of thing. So once you don't want to do one, then you're not allowed to do the other. So it's they're not good organizations at all. And they just kind of promote sectarianism. That's the way I look at it. I'm hoping they maybe changed since when I was in them, But there we go. So atavism, that's a cracking word, full of all sorts of stuff, But yeah, I've seen some, Carlos. I've seen some of the big American, the battles of the American Civil War recreations on TV and stuff, and they put a lot of effort into it and things. I think they're pretty cool. I think if you're attempting to sort of do these recreations from a historical point of view to educate and that people can have fun with them, it's a bit like live action role playing, isn't it? I think it can be a good thing, Cynthia's saying, why is Paul in the temple at all? A couple of pages back, readers are told the only guide his security force could find had insisted it be done this way. Banerjee knew a guide. I think it's to lose themselves in the crowd. To be honest with you, that's kind of what I got from it. So this is Banerjee's doing, the unknown guide's doing, a single human determining history from the epigraph. Very good, Cynthia. I like getting the links. Well done. Paul's doing. I wonder about this part of the path Paul is on. Yeah, and we haven't even met the guide yet, have we? But yes, indeed, I know one chap, and he's travelled through, crossed over the footbridge from his keep to the Qizarate office building. There's a little journey here over the opposite end of the bridge, down in amongst the shops, crossed the bridge and entered the upper passageways through the office building, and it takes him down towards Alia's Fane, and we end up pretty much inside this building, and particularly now I would have to look at how to pronounce this, but I'd go with Nave, but maybe it's Nave. Let me have a look. Is it going to give me a pronunciation? Come on. Nave. Yeah, it is Nave. I was going with Nave because of the origin of the word, but we'll get there in a wee second. But yeah, it's a very good point. And we also, whenever we meet this guide as well, a single human determining history from the epigraph, it's quite. There's a moment of possibility that this guy could kill him. Even could be a face dancer, you never know. And then there's another thing as well, actually, when we get to the fact that as much as they're hidden within this crowd, but I think the reasoning in it is that this is going to be a massive crowd. And even if someone's following Paul as he goes through these buildings, and the Qizarate, we're told, never sleep. The thing that they're concerned about is real eyes upon them. It's possible that someone might notice him, so he's affected this limp. But at the same time, probably the easiest way to lose yourself is in a big crowd. If you're being followed, just blend in, merge in, and as it moves, you move with it, and that's what's going to happen. So if that's the reasoning behind it, it kind of makes sense. Excuse me. Oh, sorry, I've jumped back. Where are I? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, some good words in this chapter tonight. I'm enjoying it. So the crowd flowed with him through tall metal doors into the gigantic nave, a gloomy place with the flickering lights far away overhead. Far away overhead, a brilliantly illuminated altar at the far end. Behind the altar, a dismal affair of wood encrusted with sand. Hidden lights played on the field of a prudor to create a rainbow borealis. So that's a prudence door that we've had in Dune before. We've talked about that only allows certain people entry, if you like. Let's just have a wee quick jump back to Dune, because the Baron uses them. Prudence door or prudence barrier is idiomatically a prudor or pru barrier, any pentashield situated for the escape of selected persons under condition of pursuit. And it says, see pentashield. Dum-dum-dum. And a pentashield is a 5-layer shield generator suitable for small areas such as doorways or passages. Large reinforcing shields become increasingly unstable with each successive layer and virtually impassable to anyone not wearing a dissembler tuned to the shield codes. So there we go. So that's a prudence door. It'll only admit certain people. Now the nave, I suppose I should have drawn this, shouldn't I? Let me see. A nave, if you like, is hang on a wee second, I'll just doodle this for you if I can. So particularly within Christian churches, there's a tendency to build them from east to west. Let me see. And within the building itself, particularly cathedrals, I suppose that regardless of the shape of the building, that would be the north side, that would be the east side, that would be the south side, and that would be the west side. So what you would get is that the churches are generally, this is the interior, if you like, and how everybody is sitting. So the nave is kind of, hang on, this bit here. And I'd imagine the altar, so the bit that I've marked with X's there, on the west side over here of the church, that's the nave. This is where your altar would be. Comes from the word navis, which is a ship, in Latin. For navis is a good one. It's one that I know is old. If anybody's interested, that old constellations, if you like. As much as we all know, for those of you who are into your astronomy, probably know a fair few of the constellations and the stories behind them. But there's some of them have kind of gone out of use, if you like. And there's an old constellation called the Argo Navis, which is the ship, the Argo, from the Argonauts, which is quite a cool one. It's a pity that constellation is not still there. So there you go. It's kind of almost a nautical term in reference to that part of a church, if you like. Prudor. Where do we get to? Sorry, I keep jumping forward and backwards here. There we are. The 7 rows of chanting acolytes ranked below that spectral curtain took on an eerie quality. Black robes, white faces, mouths moving in unison. And I like the fact that they've used certain lights, hidden lights, if you like, to create a kind of rainbow borealis, this light effect of the Prudor. And I think, of course, that Alia is going to come through it in a moment, isn't she? Paul studied the pilgrims around him, suddenly envious of their intentness. Is that right? Did I write that down? Hang on. Some of these notes I was actually writing, listening to Frank Herbert the other night, and he distracted me a fair bit because I was really enjoying having a listen to him. Let me see. What number is that? Probably is correct, actually. Sometimes I just... Number 21. All right. Oh, previous page. Yeah. Intentness. Sorry, Paul studied the pilgrims around him, suddenly envious of their intentness. Their air of listening to truths he could not hear. It seemed to him that they gained something. It seemed to him that they gained something here which was denied to him, something mysteriously healing. And I suppose it's it's kind of interesting that this is him starting to get this other side of the religion. We know what the Atreides get from this, but what do the common people get from it? And it seems to be quite a sort of mad religion if you think about it. Very much based on the Atreides family. We've been hearing some really bizarre, I'll just call it nonsense, people commentating on kind of, I don't know, I suppose comparing modern day times to the fall of the Roman Empire, and they talk about how the Romans, and they're using the terms kind of the denial of godhood, if you like, followed by sexual promiscuity within these societies, etc. And it's not quite how I would look at it at all. But certain Roman emperors are gods because they say so, if you see what I mean. And the interesting thing of it's not just to do with the Romans. You have and I think it's misunderstanding the fact that the rejection of kind of traditional polytheistic divinities and isn't kind of a full-on thing. It's more simply adding themselves to the pantheon, if you like. And it's a question of what do they really believe. And if you go back to the likes of if you go to Plato's Republic, for example, you'll find that within that certainly the Athenians don't believe in the gods, but religion is useful. There's a good discussion about it in Plato's Republic. The Republic is not the right word really for that book, because a republic is of course a Latin word and Plato's a Greek. Better term for it is on government, if you like, would be the proper a better title for what that book is really, but so if the point is, I suppose that they make the point. Plato makes the point that should we just get rid of the gods and religion and all that if they're not real? We can go up the Mount Olympus and see there's no Zeus there, that kind of thing. It's all hooey. And they go, no, but what does it give to the people, and what is it, how they use it? And it's a level of control. We can control the people, but what do they get out of it? And Frank talks about you can't take away people's symbols, this kind of thing. Is that they get something from it, something to believe in, something that might make them think that God's looking after them, that they're special, that everything will be okay, this kind of thing, So I suppose really that Paul's going to experience, I suppose, what kind of religious ecstasy is, if you like, from the point of view of a supplicant, if you like. And I suppose the terms that we use for them within this will change slightly, I suppose. But he's envious of their intentness, the air of listening to truths he could not hear. It seemed to him that they gained something here which was denied to him, something mysteriously healing. I suppose it's within religion, it's what people get from faith. Comes ultimately from a lack of knowledge. And what is it they say? Ignorance is bliss, if you understand that. And I've discussed this with a number of people. I suppose I'm a person that just likes to keep on learning and learning and learning. And it doesn't make you any happier. The more you know doesn't necessarily, help. I've often kind of wondered what it'd be like to just not know all the stuff that I know. Would I be a lot happier? Would I go to church and be all sort of happy about it and think that, yeah, it's all good? And everything that bad happens to me is for a divine reason. And the worse my life is, the better it'll probably be in the next one, this kind of stuff. The degree of knowledge means that I can't buy into that at all. And often when I'm in a religious building, if you like, I tend to pay attention. I analyze the hell out of it, to be honest, and the people. I look at all the trappings and this kind of stuff, you know. But I think, yeah, it's denied to him something mysteriously healing. He can't get that. It's his religion, isn't it? He knows what it's all about, and it's control, isn't it? And it's power. So we're told Paul here, he tried to inch his way closer to the altar, was stopped. Paul whipped his gaze around, met the probing stare of an ancient Fremen, blue eyes, overhanging brows, recognition in them. A name flashed into Paul's mind, Rasir, a companion from the siege days. I got a couple of things here with the name. My understanding is it's a first and second name within the Islamic sort of Muslim world, probably of Arabic origin, and has a meaning of either loyal or kind, if you like, but also going back, if we slightly change the spelling to scrape, to shave, etc. But I tended to think the first one. I don't really have anything else on that if anybody else has got something. But as much as this is an old companion from the siege days, we know that the Fremen are involved in the conspiracy. This is exactly what Cynthia was saying earlier about an individual. This one person could end Paul possibly right here and now. And the possibility sort of occurs to Paul, I think. In the press of the crowd, Paul knew he was completely vulnerable if Rasir planned violence. Again, he must have seen this, or has he? So the old man pressed close, one hand beneath the sand-ground robe, grasping the hilt of a crysknife, no doubt. Paul set himself as best he could to resist attack. The old man moved his head towards Paul's ear and whispered, "We will go with the others." It was the signal to identify his guide. Paul nodded. Rasir drew back and faced the altar. And here we go. The acolytes start chanting here. The acolytes chanted, "She comes from the east." She comes from the east, the acolytes chanted. "The sun stands at her back. All things are exposed. In the full glare of light, her eyes miss nothing, neither light nor dark." And this is the idea that you can't hide from your gods, if you like. A wailing rabara jarred across the voices, stilled them, and receded into silence with an electric abruptness. The crowd surged forward several meters. They were packed into a tight mass of flesh now, the air heavy with their breathing and the scent of spice. "Shai Halud writes on clean sand," the acolytes shouted. Paul felt his own breath catch in unison with those around him. A feminine chorus began singing faintly from the shadows behind the shimmering prow door. "Alia, Alia, Alia, Alia." And it grew louder and louder and then fell to a sudden silence. That's good writing again there, I think, the way Frank punctuates little bits of this. I love the way Frank uses short sentences for effect. I think it's really good. There's a couple in this, but it's just the effect that they bring. And so if we think about Balak, what we were told earlier, what we were having a natter about, this Balak, Paul thought, look out, she can be filled with angry passion too. We're going to get a sense of that too. This is the other side of Alia. Previously we were told that she guides through all storms. This one begins, "She stills all storms. Her eyes kill our enemies and torments the unbelievers from the spires of Tuono, where dawnlight strikes and clear water runs. You see her shadow." Sorry, I'll do that again. That was a bit crap of me, wasn't it? I'll just take it from the book here. "She stills all storms. Her eyes kill our enemies and torment the unbelievers. From the spires of Tuono, where dawnlight strikes and clear water runs, you see her shadow. In the shining summer heat, she serves us bread and milk, cool, fragrant with spices. Her eyes melt our enemies, torment our oppressors, and pierce all mysteries. She is Alia, 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 Alia. Slowly the voices trailed off. And again, just in response, that's the one I didn't get to look up. I'm going to have a wee nosy at that and see if we can get some meaning on that one. I've missed the word. Let's just see quickly. But I think we're getting worlds. By the way, there's another one coming, isn't there? That's the first of them, I think. That are worlds engaged in the jihad. Something else I got the other day, by the way, having a listen to Frank and stuff, is that the Tile actually escapes the Butlerian jihad, which was interesting, I thought. Let me just see. Twano. Is it in here? No. Hardly. The terminology of the Imperium in Dune is actually not really much used to, isn't this? The odd thing like Prudor, etc. Let's see. Twano from the Latin tonus, thunderclap sound from ancient Greek. Twano, let me have a wee look here. Goodness, actually, there's a fair bit of Twano here. Let me see if we can figure something out. Bear with me a wee second, folks. I'll just do this now. The spires of Twano, actually, there's a fair bit of Germanic origin. This is from, let's see, almost on we go. Meaning death. Twani, Twano, Netherworld, that's from Finnish. Twano. No, Italian second. Where were we? Gotcha. Let's have a look. Yeah. So in Italian, taken from the Latin, tonus is thunderclap. Sound or tone from the ancient Greek tonos, which is doublet of tono. Thunder is what we've got there. Grab a pen. Yeah, let me get that down. The extension, a loud roaring noise, thunder or rumble as well. Twano is the noun from the Latin tonus. Thunderclap. Interesting. So there's a couple of meanings, but that was. I'm sure I can find a little bit more on that, but I'll go with it. I'll see. Let you know about that for next time. But that's just a wee word I forgot to do there. Probably, as I said, could be a location on Arrakis. That's another possibility, isn't it? Let's grab a map. Spires of Twano, where dawnlight strikes and clear water runs, you see her shadow. Could also be death, another world, which would also make sense. That's Finnish, from the proto-Finnish, is it? I'll investigate that a little bit more. There's some good stuff on Alia in this as well, and this is the Atreides. Very quickly. Do a scan. Let's see. Have we got anything like that? No, don't see anything like that on the original map. Nope. There you go. But yeah, I suppose so. This is she stills all storms. Her eyes kill her enemies and torments the unbelievers. From the spires of Toronto, where dawnlight strikes and clear water runs, you see her shadow. In the summer heat, she serves us bread and milk, cool, fragrant with spices. Her eyes melt our enemies, torment our oppressors, tormenting and pierce all mysteries. She is Alia, 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 Alia. Excuse me. And slowly the voice is trailed off. I've got one wee thing I want to say about this. And as much as Alia is probably 15 to 16 years of age here, let's say 15 turning 16, with what we're about to see in the Rite of the Oracle, can you imagine 3 or 4 year old Alia doing it? And how much more a religious effect that would have, that this extremely strange and knowledgeable little kid. Can you imagine Alia as 4 years of age doing this? And we have to assume that, her and Paul have been doing this kind of thing for about 12 years. But this is where we get, I suppose, Paul felt sickened. What are we doing? He asked himself. Alia was a child witch, but she was growing older. And he thought, growing older is to grow more wicked. I'm not so sure about that, but yeah. But yeah, imagine, I suppose I said maybe at the end of this chapter as we get through it, just picture Paul observing 4 or 5 year old Alia doing this, and I would imagine that the effect on the crowd would be even greater. This is very much going to run in a sort of negative, the darker side of Alia, if you like. Yeah, what are we doing? This is what they do. This is the Atreides. This is their control. This is, through the mysticism and religion. The collective mental atmosphere of the temple ate at his psyche. He could sense that element of himself which was one with those all around him, but the differences formed a deadly contradiction. He stood immersed, isolated in personal sin, which he could never expiate. The immensity of the universe outside the temple flooded his awareness. How could one man, one ritual, hope to knit such immensity into a garment fitted to all men? And Paul shuddered. We're going to get something similar with Ali in a little bit, but I'll point it out. But that's the effect. It makes him shudder. How can I take one thing? And this is the problem of the politician, as well as the religious, priest or rabbi or imam or etc. Is how does this one thing fit everybody? And ultimately, it never will. There'll be people that you'll need to put down, repress, people who you don't want to speak out, that just somehow fall through the loops of what you're talking about and what you're doing, if you like. And the universe, I like this, the universe opposed him at every step. It eluded his grasp, conceived countless disguises to elude him. That universe would never agree with any shape he gave it. A profound hush spread through the temple. It's a very interesting thing. When I when I picked up our noodles, my wee Jack Russell, the thing that we always say is it's me and Noodles against the universe forever. Not right, Noodles? This is something I've been saying to her about since she was a little pup. Because me and her used to travel around a lot, and even when she was wee for a wee while, I didn't have a car, etc. So me and her would just go everywhere, and that's what I used to say. But it's the idea that the universe wasn't made for you, if you see what I mean. And no matter who you are, it's an interesting thing. It's just sometimes the way we might think about ourselves in life. But even the world, it wasn't put here for your benefit. It's meant to be for everybody, this kind of thing. But that means that the universe, the world, etc., however you want to look at it, is not going to do what you want it to do. And it's a very interesting thing to think about. Oddly enough, when our wee Bonnie was ill, although about a year and a half ago, we were talking about on the station that the wee dog had a heart attack. And I suppose, as they say, when you're desperate, you might cast at straws and this kind of thing, grasp at straws. Sorry, but I kind of asked the universe. I just what had happened to the wee dog was terrible, and it wasn't kind of a deliberate thing, but she had a real hard time of it for a few months, and I didn't want her end of days, her last months to be that bad, And I actually I don't believe in God, but I asked the universe for something. I wanted to see a wee dog run across the field and just be happy one more time. And I got it in spades, if you see. And I looked after the thing for a week and a half and didn't think she was going to recover. And the next thing, she's up at the top of the stairs going like that. She's half blind. And we managed to get 4 more months of just perfect images of that wee doggy running across the field. But we got her health back and got her fitness back. It's the first and I think only time I've ever asked the universe for anything, if you like. And it's kind of odd. So it's one of those things as well, I suppose. A long time ago, whenever the National Lottery came out in this country, it was one of the first big rollovers, if you like. And I did 2 tickets, and I got all 6 numbers. I should have won 20 million quid, but I had them in order on the first 3, 1, 2, 3. On one line and the second 3 on the next line. And I just bought 2 tickets, so I won 20 quid. But if I'd done that, I would have won 20 million. And I've never played the lottery since because I got my numbers, if you see what I mean. And the chances of me getting them ever again are just, the likelihood of something really bad happening to the planet is more likely than me ever getting those numbers again. But the universe doesn't behave itself, and it's not here for us, if you see what I mean. And the idea that you could shape it, in any shape or form, and such a thing is delusional. And how can one man, one ritual, hope to knit such immensity into a garment fitted to all men? The universe opposed him at every step. It eluded his grasp, and hand grasp agency, conceived countless disguises to elude him. That universe would never agree with any shape he gave it. I think it's a very, very important point there. So it's a very smart little thing that Frank has written there. So we're told a profound hush spread through the temple, and Alia emerged from the darkness behind the shimmering rainbows. She wore a yellow robe trimmed in Atreides green, yellow for sunlight, green for the death that produced life. Paul experienced the sudden, surprising thought that Alia had emerged here just for him alone. He stared across the mob in the temple at his sister. She was his sister. Sorry, she was his sister. He knew her ritual and its roots, but he had never before stood out here with pilgrims, watched her through their eyes. Here, performing the mystery of this place, he saw that she partook of the universe which opposed him. And again, a lot of this, I think, in this chapter is this Janus aspect of Paul and Alia. That they're one and the same, but facing outward, and 2 different aspects of the same coin, if you like. And as much as he feels the universe is opposing him, she partakes in that universe that opposes him. And possibly, in a way, at this point, maybe she does. I think there's a lot in this chapter. Well, we'll get to it in a wee moment, but it's kind of, are they on the same page or not? And that's been, if they both have these abilities, and Alia is even meant to be, something more than Paul. Yeah. And she emerges from the darkness behind the shimmering rainbows, All of this is theatre. And it's the effect of theatre, isn't it? And it's an old and primal, I wouldn't say maybe primal, but it's an old thing. If we go back to the ancient world, the importance of theatre there is incredible. It's your main form of entertainment, probably. And you can even see, you can even get the sort of rapture that some people get from a film, the hero worship that's coming out for Denis Villeneuve's Dune, both for his film and him. You know, um, hmm. But this is what religion does really well. I think is theater. You know, and it goes back to things like swinging the gods in on a crane. Ooh, how do we get someone? How do we make it look like the gods are here? This kind of thing, the Deus ex machina. Hmm. Uh, which, with part of his awareness, Paul knew that the chalice contained the unaltered melange, the subtle poison, her sacrament of the oracle. Hmm. There you go. I've done a wee chalice down in the bottom. There. Chalice comes from the word. Oh, God, I hate that with these teeth. I'm whistling all the time. Chalice comes from the word calyx. If you like, it's the Latin word is calyx, but the calyx is the Greek word for cup. Excuse me. We have a wee bit of, I suppose, the Arthurian within this, but that's as I pointed out, the Holy Grail, if you like. A grail is not a cup. A bit like a tray. Here we go. Her voice caressed the ears, flower sound, flowing and musical. That's cracking writing right there. Excellent. And it kind of runs with this kind of flowers and life and garden, yellow for sunlight, green for the death that produced life. And if we back up a little bit, where was it? There was something that was quite. Bear with me. Let me just see if I can find it. And again, I suppose this is the feminine to Paul's masculine, if you like. Even Alia's chorus is it's described as it's a feminine chorus, isn't it? But what was I looking for? Oh yes, if we go back to the fireplaces visited by Alia. Pardon me, the end of that is sweet fragrance, flower scented, surrounds us in her presence. Pardon me. And I just thought, and to me, it almost sounds like Alia's using the voice, and it also makes you wonder what would the voice be like amplified to such a crowd. And again, for those of us, Hitler's ability to do this in our country, Ian Paisley, I suppose, did it quite well. He's a shouter, full of rage and anger. Both men would be orators like that. And also, but the one that I always like to think of, I still say the best version of the Lord of the Rings is the BBC. As much as I despise the BBC, this is them going way, way back. The BBC version of the Lord of the Rings. I wonder who did it. Hang on a second. The actor. Let me get this down for you here. I've got it on CD. I've always preferred listening to it on tape. There's my copy there. This is the best version of the Lord of the Rings by far, apart from J.R.R. Tolkien's book. That's by J.R. And what a great design, by the way, isn't it? It's kind of got a very, very pretty famous kind of cast in it. And believe it or not, Samwise Gamgee is played by Bill Nighy a long time ago, going under the name of William Nighy. But Ian Holm is Frodo, and Michael Horden is Gandalf, and Robert Stevens as Aragorn, and the wonderful Peter Woodthorpe as Gollum, with John Le Mesurier as Bilbo, and he's Bilbo in the original Hobbit as well. But who am I looking for? Saruman. Let's see. Sorry, this is kind of shiny gold. It's kind of. There you go. By the way, it's got a lovely wee map and stuff in it. Let me see. Saruman. Peter Howell is an incredible Saruman, and the use of voice by him at the point where he's Saruman surrounded at Isengard, and he does that or this kind of thing, but then he goes, oh, we were once friends, and the switch between the kind of the demented Adolf Hitler type shouty of Saruman to the wonderful. It's just like this. It plays on your ears so well that it's almost hypnotic. Just this writing here kind of reminded me of that actor's performance in a way, but it's a bit like the voice as well. Her voice caressed the ears, flower sound, flowing and musical, and I kind of the voice that in Denis Villeneuve's Dune is like people barking at each other. It's very dog-like, I thought. I didn't like it. It didn't give me this. I thought the voice was a much more subtle thing, you know. So her voice caressed the ears, flower sound, flowing and musical, running with that with her here. And here we go. This is the cant and recant, I suppose, isn't it? In the beginning, she says, we were empty. And the chorus, ignorant of all things, the chorus sang. We did not know the power that abides in every place and in every time, the chorus sang. Here is the power, Alia said, raising the chalice slightly. It brings us joy, sang the chorus. And Paul's thoughts here, and it brings us distress. It awakens the soul, Alia said. It dispels all doubts, the chorus sang. In words we perish, Alia said. In the power we survive, sang the chorus. And Alia put the chalice to her lips and drank. And she's taken her snifter of melange here. And from what I can get from it's unrefined melange. If you see what I mean, it's the pure stuff. Hasn't been cut. That kind of thing. And so there is, I suppose this is Paul here. To his astonishment, Paul found he was holding his breath. Excuse me, like the meanest pilgrim of this mob. I suppose that's interesting, by the way, just jumping back there. He refers to them both in the previous, a few paragraphs back, as the mob in the temple. And then he's out here with pilgrims. So we have the switch between mob and pilgrims, really. Pilgrims, maybe supplicants, that kind of thing. Paul found he was holding his breath like the meanest pilgrim of this mob. Despite every shred of personal knowledge about the experience Alia was undergoing, he had been caught in the Tau web. He felt himself remembering how that fiery poison coursed into the body. Memory unfolded the time stopping when awareness became a mote which changed the poison. He re-experienced the awakening into timelessness where all things were possible. He knew Alia's present experience, yet he saw now that he did not know it. Now, that was a bit confusing to me, because if we read what that just said there, memory unfolded the time stopping when awareness became a mote which changed the poison. And that's a reference to the transmutation of the water of life, which is not melange, is it? It's bile from the, it's the stunted worm that's drowned. It's the bile that it produces. But we're told earlier that the chalice contained the unaltered melange, the subtle poison. It's confusing, and I don't know what you guys think. I kind of got from the first bit, unaltered melange was just raw, pure melange. Subtle poison. But in this, the time stopping when awareness became a mote which changed the poison, that's kind of, I thought, a reference to the water of life. Which is interesting. He re-experienced the awakening into timelessness where all things were possible. He knew Alia's present experience, yet he saw now that he did not know it. There you go, paradox. knowing and not knowing, opposites. There's a lot of that here. I suppose it's he's on the receiving end of the religious experience rather than being the deliverer of that religious experience, if you like, or being a witness to it from the other end. It's the effect of the theater, the power of it. A mystery blinded his eyes. Something similar to the thing that I would point it out was that Paul shuddered. Here, Alia trembled and sank to her knees. Paul exhaled with the enraptured pilgrims. He nodded. Part of the veil began to lift from him, absorbed in the bliss of a vision. He had forgotten that each vision belonged to all those who were still on the way, still to become. In the vision, one passed through a darkness unable to distinguish reality from insubstantial accident. One hungered for absolutes which could never be. And of course, we always talk about the absolutes. That and again, that Frank talks about. That's a big part of this book. And again, I suppose creating absolutes that we would desire. I think he was chatting a wee bit about that in tape number 15 the other night. I was thinking about I was having a wee chat with the individual who sent me some stuff on that. Possibly might do a little bit of work on those audio tapes once we get some of this stuff done. Because there's a lot of good insight there into Frank, and the Dune series. They're well worth listening to. There's little bits where the volume fades out a wee bit. You might have to pop some headphones on to kind of try and listen a bit better. But so yeah, see with so we get the sense that the pilgrims are enraptured with this. And in the vision, one passed through a darkness unable to distinguish reality from insubstantial accident. One hungered for absolutes which could never be. It's also kind of almost identical to the description of how Alia comes on stage, if you like, from behind the darkness of the Prue door into the rainbow light that's created by the hidden lights. And of course, Alia taking more and more of the drug. I don't know what you guys think. Is that the water of life, or is that simply unrefined melange? I generally am confused about that. Or is that she's taking the melange, and it's that memory unfolded, the time stopping when awareness became a mote, which changed the poison, that it's kicking in a memory of Paul altering the water of life. Because we're told he re-experienced the awakening into timelessness where all things were possible. He knew Alia's present experience, yet saw now that he did not know it. And that again makes us question the nature of Paul's prescience, doesn't it? Mystery blinded his eyes. So with the enraptured he nodded, part of the veil began to lift from him, absorbed in the bliss of a vision. He had forgotten that each vision belonged to all those who were still on the way, still to become. In the vision, one passed through a darkness, unable to distinguish reality from insubstantial accident. One hungered for absolutes which would never be. And I've hit the end of, there we go, another book. Go to volume 2. So that's a whole notebook done, folks. There we are. That's all this kind of stuff. We fill them up. That's notebook number 5 now. Goodness gracious. I think these are 300 pages each. So you're kind of getting a sense of what we're doing with these things. And they're handy. They really, I think we've used them to jump back. So let's go to the next one and check stuff out that we're not too sure on. And it's I know it's not exactly high tech, but it's the way that I like to work. I love notebooks and ink pens and things like that. I'd sit and write with a quill, a feather quill and an ink pot if I found it. If I could actually, but I would think they're quite impractical things. But I like it a wee bit old fashioned. I'll tell you what, folks. Would you excuse me a wee quick second? I'm just going to nip to the loo very quickly, and we'll get right back on with it. I'll just mark where we're at there. My new notebook, and I'll show you my new doodle. I'll be right back. Bear with me a wee sec. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, the idea of being in a big crowd, and watching people behave. Um, I've watched when I was a lecturer. I wasn't part of a union or anything like that. I wasn't invited to belong to one. But all the lecturers, etc., my college were on strike, etc. And I watched them become a mob, a mindless mob. One of the things was I couldn't kind of take work off because I taught a whole bunch of young adults with Down syndrome, for example. They came from kind of a little, what would you call it, like a little closed community thing. And sort of bringing them down involved buses and routines and stuff like that. It's all sorts of little things that meant that we just couldn't put them aside. Does that make sense? And boy, did they treat me like shit for it. But they did so in front of my class. So I had to wait for my class to be. You can't sort of kick off in front of those young adults with Down syndrome and stuff. The anger and all of that stuff would really scare them, etc. So you have to kind of watch how you behave. Just keep your your tone of voice and stuff like that good. But I waited till they all got into the classroom, and then I bollocked a lot of them for their behavior. They behaved as a mob with they were a mob, and just disgusted by them. You know. When I was asked by my employer why wasn't I on strike, and I said that I thought I was perfectly well paid. Thank you very much. And I'm very happy, but I'm very well paid. What's the bloody problem? It's greed. A long time ago. But I remember I went to see the Sisters of Mercy, and I think it was at Crystal Palace football ground. It was. Who was it now? It was to see the lead act was Depeche Mode. This was back in I think 95. And I was there to see the Sisters of Mercy. Really, it was the first time I went down to see them over in England. And there was a kind of, how would you put it? A kind of English type of hip hop rap type band. Sort of North London boys. They were singing a song about Northern Ireland. And I remember everybody in the crowd just, yeah. And the lyrics came across the microphone that you're a bastard if you're from the 6-county bastard state. And I remember being possibly the only person there that was totally offended by this, that I actually started screaming, "You're a bunch of," and threw my lunch at them. And I think I came close to clocking one of the guys. But I've had a few incidences where I've been in a crowd and not behaved the same as that crowd, and big crowds, mobs, this kind of thing. And I've always found it interesting how people behave like that. That there's a sense of losing your individuality. In certain things, whether it be religious, it could be just having a good time at a concert, that kind of thing. Where you're just, yeah, this is great. Dancing away, just partaking, but something can just instantly set you apart. Pardon me. So we had that. Let me. Oh, I really shouldn't have put that book away just yet. But with that hunger, let me see if I can get to it. Where was it there? Volume 2. Let me see. The use of the word hungering was it a wee moment ago? Is what I was looking for. Oh, it was about there, but we've got it again here, I suppose. Let me see. Yeah, one hungered for absolutes, which could never be. Next volume. Sorry about that. Hungering. One lost the present. Alia swayed with the rapture of the spice change. Yeah, I think it's she taking the water of life. I don't know. Spice change. It's not clear, is it? But I think it possibly is. Paul felt that some transcendental presence spoke to him, saying, "Look, see there, see what you've ignored." And again, this is this religious theater, this ecstasy, this rapture that these people are having. Let me see. I'll catch up to some comments. Cynthia's saying, in the siege, that's what I was thinking. The Fremen experienced the Tau web when they passed the altered water of life around and each partook. Here it is experienced merely by watching Alia drink and change the spice. So, yeah, is it? I thought you'd answered it for me, and then you've left me just still thinking about it. It seems very much that you're saying about the Tau web that he's caught up in it. That's exactly what I was thinking, Cynthia. But the thing that confused me is this, just from Frank's writing here, is this the water of life, or is this just melange? And it's ritual. It's not the real. It's pomp and circumstance. It's not the real thing, and that there is, as you say, that the Tau web. That is experienced merely by watching Alia drinking and changing the spice, that they get to observe it is good enough, if you see what I mean. But you kind of I don't know. I think it is. I think it is melange. Because she's taking melange more and more, isn't she? For the vision. And that's the thing about melange, it requires more and more of this stuff. It's a good point. Or perhaps Paul is caught in a different kind of web with Alia than experienced by the other pilgrims. And Carlos is saying a benevolent mob mentality. I'm not so sure if there is such a thing, Yeah, it's. I'll tell you an interesting one actually was. Goodness, now I don't remember when this was. It's back when I was elected. Probably I was in Berlin. It must have been December 2005 to January 2006, I think. Might have been the next year, but I think that was the year. And went to the Brandenburg tour for the big New Year thing. And there was supposed to be about 1 million people there. My understanding there was closer to 1.5. And an extra half doesn't sound much, but that half's an extra 500,000 people, and it was quite freaky. And the sheer size of that crowd, and I mean the firework, all sorts of things, really interesting to experience. And I've been to a kind of similar New Year thing up in Edinburgh for the Hogmanay, which was not quite as bad, but the crowd was so huge and so pressing. That we had to, myself and a friend who I was there with, we got separated from the rest of our group. And we ended up with a bunch of Germans there, and they had brought their kids, little kids, say about 8 or 9 years of age. Because of the press of the crowd, people not really understanding what was wrong, these kids were terrified and crying their eyes out. And with the German folks, their parents, basically, we kind of had to form a ring around them if you see what I mean, because of just to protect them against the push and shove. That never been in a situation like that. Quite frankly, neither had I. And this is just a big crowd moving and all packed together, just trying to enjoy some fireworks and saying Happy New Year to you. This kind of thing, all as you say, a benevolent mentality, if you like, but it was dangerous. And I was kind of wondering why on earth have you brought your kids to this? It's and I think I kind of got it that it would have been a good night for the kids there if if the crowd had been probably the size that they had thought it would be, but it was much bigger. Um, Kind of really interesting night around Berlin that night. I ended up all sorts of places, but it was cool. But yeah. Something saying I see the confusion here regarding melange and the water of life. Yeah. I think Alia is drinking the water of life in this ceremony. She is doing theatre, but must also feed her own desire to know the future. I kind of thought it was just the first description, really, that I went, oh, she's drinking melange, and unrefined is kind of where I went. But then that's why I started asking Cynthia. I kind of think I agree with you, to be honest with you, but I just wanted to throw it out there. And especially the whole, the kind of siege orgy, the Tau web, if you like, that ritual involves within the siege, and the how the Reverend Mothers do that there for the Fremen. I thought that this was something quite similar, but it's almost a kind of like an Atreides kind of empire version of the Fremen kind of siege orgy, if you like. There's something almost sexual about it. But yeah, it was just Frank's language there. It was a little bit confusing. The other aspect of it, I suppose, is that we know how melange is made, or what melange is, and that it's a byproduct of the worms. Then it's quite possible that the bile itself is you could say argue that it's a form of melange too. Oh, just a slightly like a deadlier version of it, that's basically worm puke, isn't it? Worm bile. Yeah, thank you for that. So this, perhaps Paul is caught in a different kind of web with Alia than the experienced by the other pilgrims. Yeah. It's just a little thing, isn't it? But it's we like to try and get things right here, but sometimes it's, I don't know, what's going on here, and I always think it's good to ask you guys. Many heads are better than one, as they say. As kind of as I said about listening to Frank talk about some of this stuff, but it was very interesting to talk, having him listen to about even himself being as a reader, but how different readers bring different things to this party, have different pieces of knowledge, different viewpoints, different personal histories, that different ways they relate to the book, and it's always good to get as many as possible, I think. Where were we? Let's see. Yes, yeah. Look, see there. See what you've ignored. This, and Paul feeling that this is some transcendental presence speaking to him. In that instant, he thought he looked through others' eyes, that he saw an imaginary. I'll read that again. In that instant, he thought he looked through others' eyes, that he saw an imagery and rhythm in this place, which no artist or poet could reproduce. It was vital and beautiful, a glaring light that exposed all power gluttony, even his own. So we've had that hungering a little bit there now, power gluttony. Makes you think a little bit of the Baron, doesn't it, as well? Those terms. Alia spoke. Her amplified voice boomed across the nave. Luminous night, she cried, and a moan swept through the crush of pilgrims. Nothing hides in such a night, Alia said. What rare light is this darkness? You cannot fix your gaze upon it. Senses cannot record it. No words describe it. Her voice lowered. The abyss remains. It is pregnant with all the things yet to be. Ah, what gentle violence. I don't know. Yeah, Alia's a bit full on here, isn't she? It's all we've got a lot of paradox here, don't we? Gentle violence is almost oxymoronic, isn't it? The abyss remains, pregnant with all the things yet to be. The darkness. Asking this, so he felt that he felt special whenever this was being that it was done just for him. But I suppose that the point is that that's the way all the pilgrims and all the supplicants are meant to feel as well, almost as if she's just talking to them. For anyone who's done any teaching or lecturing and stuff, if you've got a decent sized room, and I always think it's funny me sitting here doing this. Because when I used to lecture, I walked everywhere. Literally a peripatetic teacher, particularly computer systems. I'd be on my feet giving the info for about an hour, 15 hour and 20 minutes, and then everybody hit the computers, and then I'd go round every one of my students individually. But my lectures used to be 3 hours long, so I kind of combine teaching and lecturing. But particularly when you're talking to a room, it's part of that technique that you can. There's a lot of really bad lectures, and they'll sit up at a little podium and read you stuff, blah 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 blah, and they're reading usually their work, this kind of thing. But if you know how to engage with people and how to work a room, if you've done any kind of performance art or anything like that, lecturing and teaching are very much like a performance art if you do it well. But the trick is to move around, grip one person's attention, point to them, and chat a bit to them and bring other people in. And I'm sure and it does, you make it it often kind of makes people sit up actually when you focus your attention on them. Oh God, he's looking at me, this kind of thing. But I would try and do it to everyone in the room, and I'd move around the room, get people to actually turn and look at me, but tend to move. My wife says my head movements are like some sort of demented bird. That I'm very kind of all over the place with my head when I'm talking, and but I would use body language a lot, and just to try tone of voice, and really I have to project my voice a lot as well, which I'm pretty good at. But me and this kind of thing, making everyone in the room comfortable, bringing them into it, trying not to ignore anyone, and throwing out questions and stuff to them. It's a good technique, I think. And I kind of miss it. As I said, I find it weird doing this sitting down. I'm not used to kind of moving about a lot, and even with I would be teaching some of my students, I've actually got a board here. I'll get up on my feet and demonstrate stuff, and etc. Saying that, it's more comfy on a chair. I'm getting older. But yes, all these, and Dune is riddled with paradox. Paradox is, I think if you go all the way down to the end of my PhD videos, you'll see that word there in the conclusions. What's the best thing we can say about Frank? His work, his writing is it's paradoxical. His characters are paradoxical. And something that's been pointed out to me actually is that ultimately, what is the ultimate paradox in Dune? I'll get there. But we have Frank's word on it in those audio tapes. So I'm slowly getting my way through them, but I find it tricky doing this work and listening to Frank because he's very distracting. You just sort of, oh, what's he on about? Oh, okay, let's I'm sitting. I thought it'd be a good thing to put on in the background here, and listen to as I work along. I end up making spelling mistakes or skipping lines, and just because Frank's that interesting, listening to him talk, I think the thing I was listening to was a conversation with, I think, probably Willis E. McNally. I'm not too sure. Didn't have an introduction on it. Sounded like it, though. Stuff to do with, pardon me, Oh, what's it called? My brain, having a brain fart. The Dune Encyclopedia, for God's sake. That's it. It's right in front of me. Stuff to do with this. So it's some of those interviews are pretty interesting, But I love that. Um, just the abyss remains. It is pregnant with all the things yet to be. What gentle violence. And Paul felt that he waited for some private signal from his sister. It could be any action or word, something of wizardry and mystical process, an outward streaming that would fit him like an arrow into a cosmic bow. This instant lay like quivering mercury in his awareness. A couple of good similes there for Frank. Like an arrow in a cosmic bow would fits the idea of Paul as Apollo. Pardon me, and Alia as Artemis. Very much the far-fetched arrows, etc. When Apollo and Artemis come to slaughter mortals, it's with their bows and arrows usually. Such as the children of Niobe, isn't it? Niobe, all tears. They slaughter, isn't it? She compares herself to Leto, and in Greek mythology, so she sends Apollo and Artemis to slaughter all of her children, but one of them survives, as is usual, to bring possible revenge later. No, I don't think that happens. It's hard to take revenge against the god, isn't it? Unless they're a man god type thing. So Alia again. There will be sadness, Alia intoned. I remind you that all things are but a beginning, forever beginning. Worlds wait to be conquered. Some within the sound of my voice will attain exalted destinies. You will sneer at the past, forgetting what I tell you now. Within all distances, there is unity. There's oneness. That sounds like a bit of Atreides propaganda, and it sounds like recruitment, doesn't it? Religious recruitment. Worlds wait to be conquered. There's a jihad going on. Some within the sound of my voice will attain exalted destinies. How so? You'll probably want to go and fight in the jihad. You will sneer at the past, forgetting what I tell you now. Within all distances, there is unity. And that's kind of going to be relevant to this woman that's going to ask a question of her in a moment or two. And Paul suppressed a cry of disappointment as Alia lowered her head. And once again, this is an important thing with Paul and his prescience. She had not said the thing he waited to hear. And is that he was expecting her to say something? He felt that he waited for some private signal from his sister. It could be any action or word, something of wizardry and mystical process, an outward streaming that would fit him like an arrow into a cosmic bow. The instant lay like quivering mercury in his awareness. It doesn't go the way he thinks. Alia lowered her head. She had not said the thing he waited to hear. What was that? Something he'd experienced in a vision, possibly. Things not happening the way Paul sees them is a thing. His body felt like a dry shell, a husk, abandoned by some desert insect. Again, if we take that as a kind of a water metaphor, if you like, simile, sorry. He feels like he's devoid of water, of moisture. It could almost be a sense that, of course, with the Fremen take the water from the dead, it could be, a shell, a dead body, just what's left behind. It's a good wee simile there, and I think it works. Paul's thoughts here are, others must feel something similar, he thought. He probably, this is the case. It's what he's experiencing, probably not quite the same as the audience, but he's getting the feeling of it, isn't he? He sensed the restlessness about him. Abruptly, a woman in the mob, someone far down in the nave to Paul's left, cried out, "A world a wordless noise of anguish. Ah! Sorry. Do these things for effect here. Alia lifted her head, and Paul hid the giddy sensation that the distance between them collapsed, that he stared into her glazed eyes, only inches away from her. So Alia is under the influence, if you like. But this howl of anguish from this woman, Alia takes it as a call. Who summons me? And the word summon, I suppose, maybe has more than one meaning in that sense. And the woman, I do, the woman cried. I do, Alia. Oh, Alia, help me. They say my son was killed on Muratan. Is he gone? Will I never see my son again? Never. Muratan's probably a reference to Mauritania, I think. I'll have a wee look at, just another world. Mauritania is still about, isn't it? What is it? Hang on. What do we call Mauritania today? Republic. Oh yeah, it's the Republic of Mauritania is still there. Yeah, Islamic Republic of Mauritania, sovereign country in Northwest Africa. That's the name, just in often relation to what we talk about with the Berbers and things like that. The country's name derives from the ancient Berber kingdom of Mauritania, located in North Africa within the ancient Maghreb. Berbers occupied what is now Mauritania beginning in the 3rd century AD, etc. Really interesting. What's particularly cool about down there? Let me see. Oh yeah, well, something not particularly good. Mauritania is generally seen as having a poor human rights record and is particularly censored for the perpetuation of slavery as an institution within Mauritanian society, with an estimation by the 2018 Global Slavery Index of about 90,000 slaves in the country, which is 2.1% of the population. That's not good. Let me see, but was there anything? What am I thinking of? It's not country. Bear with me a wee second. Having a brain fart. Oh, is it that big? Huge. Yeah, the Rishat structures in Mauritania. I'll type that in for you guys so you can have a look at it. If anybody's not heard of this thing, it's quite interesting. There's a lot of hocus pocus nonsense about this. Yeah, there you go. Something of real interest. Or the Gwelb Rishat in Arabic is Qalb Rishat. Rishat, sorry, is a prominent circular geological feature in the Ardrar Plateau. That sounded very Northern Irish, that, didn't it? Ardrar. Sorry. In the Adrar Plateau of the Sahara. Is located near Otheym in the Ardrar region of Mauritania. In the local dialect, Rishat means feathers, and it is also known locally in Arabic as tagans, referring to the circular opening of the leather pouch that is used to draw water from local wells. So it's an eroded geological dome, 40 kilometers in diameter. There's got a nice picture of it from the space station there. Check it out; it's a fascinating thing. There's a lot of hooey about it, to say the least. And you find a lot of hooey about it on YouTube. It's hooey, a lot of hooey, something you guys might know. I'm wondering, is that a very Northern Irish thing to say? But a lot of hooey is a lot of bollocks, basically, a lot of nonsense. Sorry, being silly. So I think, I don't know, when we get the sense of Alia being kind of the two sides to Alia, if you like, the one who looks after the Fremen, the one who obliterates their enemies, but we get both sides of her here, I think. And I don't think she's particularly nice to this woman. The woman that screams the noise of anguish wants to know how they say my son has been killed on Muratan. Is he gone? Will I never see my son again? Never. In other words, can you tell me, and this is an oracle that she's asking, can you tell me, is my son dead? And such is the nature of oracles, I suppose, that you'll never get a straight answer from them, would you? Um, I've often found that straight answers do not come from young women hyped up on drugs, basically. Or um, so Alia's response to this woman is, "You try to walk backward in the sand," Alia intoned. "Nothing is lost. Everything returns later, but you may not recognize the changed form that returns." And that is metempsychosis. Excuse me. Anybody wants to check this out, look up Pythagoras. The class Pythagoras' theorem isn't Pythagoras' theorem. They argue that the first proof for it is nonsense. The suggestion is that he rediscovered a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's bollocks as well. Excuse my French. If you look into Pythagoras' theorem, do a bit of investigating, find it in ancient Egypt, and you'll find it a lot earlier in ancient Sumeria. So Pythagoras is around the 600 BC-ish, if you like, and you can find this back probably close to 3,400 years before he was born. So Pythagoras is probably the only mathematician that you'll ever hear talked about in secondary schools here, instead of someone like Boole, for example, who's much more relevant. But what classicists know him really well for, a bunch of things, is metempsychosis, which is the transmigration of the soul, is what it means. Reincarnation. What's the story about him attacking some guy? So I'll just tell you that. I'll look him up quickly. He beat some guy up for kicking a dog. And we like our dogs. And there we go. Pythagoras, let's see, circa 570 to 495 BC, so 6th century BC. Pythagoras the Samian, ancient Ionian Greek philosopher, polymath, and the eponymous founder of Pythagoreanism. He's a bit of a so-and-so. There we go. Teaching most securely identified with Pythagoras' metempsychosis, or the transmigration of souls, which holds that every soul is immortal and upon death enters into a new body. He may also have devised the doctrine of musica universalis, which holds that the planets move according to mathematical equations and thus resonate to produce an inaudible symphony of music. There's all sorts with him. But let me see, can we get the actual story here? Let's see, metempsychosis, transmigration of souls, especially its reincarnation after death. Terms derived from ancient Greek philosophy and recontextualized by modern philosophers such as Arthur Schopenhauer, Kurt Gödel, Mircea Eliade, and Magdalena Villava. Otherwise, the term transmigration is more appropriate. The word plays a prominent role in James Joyce's Ulysses and is also associated with Nietzsche. Another term sometimes used synonymously is palingenesis. It says it's unclear how the doctrine of metempsychosis arose in ancient Greece. It's got to probably to do with Buddhism and the Silk Road, to be honest with you. And the Orphic religion believed in metempsychosis to do with Orpheus and those mysteries. So let me see. Earliest Greek thinker with whom it is connected is Pherecydes of Cyrus, but Pythagoras is said to have been his pupil and its first famous philosophical exponent. I'm not seeing it there. I'll tell you the story. Anyway, basically, some guy, it's not on Wikipedia, but it looks a bit, some guy was basically kicking a dog in Athens. And Pythagoras laid him out, basically. Don't you kick that dog? He said, that's my buddy. And I don't know which friend, I can't remember the name of the friend he was referring to. But he basically told this guy that was his best buddy, reincarnated as a dog. Pythagoras himself believed that he had been reincarnated from one of the Trojan heroes. And he kind of went to a place, set some evidence up, came back and said, oh, the proof of it lies on this shield somewhere. And then someone went off and went, oh, he's clearly he was reincarnated. But he was a wee bit mad, to be honest with you. He's what we would call a pre-Socratic philosopher. And they're all they're quite smart, they're quite good, but they're a wee bit bonkers, a lot of them, So the likes of Thales and Anaximander and Heraclitus, they're all pre-Socratic philosophers. A great bunch of fellows. I enjoy them very much. Carlos is saying, isn't that what they're claiming is Atlantis? That's exactly correct. Yes, that's what they're claiming is Atlantis. No. There's an awful lot of this stuff surrounding study of the ancient world at the minute. Egypt, Mesopotamia, stuff like this. There seems to be a real determination to connect this stuff to aliens and all sorts of things. I'd say your main candidate for Atlantis is probably, some sort of Greek island around Crete. Probably, it could also possibly be the Cretans. And interesting enough, talk about stuff like that. If there's a guy did a bit of research, if you look into it, Carlos, it was to do with it. A lot of people have been able to take works from the classical world and go off and find stuff because it's described so well. And one of them in particular is where is Odysseus is Ithaca, and again, I think it's flooded and it's underwater. The island's still there, but specifically the little palace of Odysseus and how it's described in the Odyssey, for example. I think there's a bay on the island that kind of lines up with that. It's kind of a thing, There's Ryan the Scar saying, "Cheers, everybody! Hi, Ryan. How you doing?" But things like that. I suppose they fascinate people, and then they go, "Wow, look at that! That's a funny shape, isn't it?" It must be X, Y, or Z or something. I suppose the interesting thing about that part of the world, particularly around the Sahara and North Africa, and all around that sort of area into Egypt and Sudan, is that things get buried under the sand. And some civilizations are city-states, if you want, for want of a better word, if you like. But there's all sorts under the sand. Who knows what you'll find there? But you have to put your common sense head on it and approach it with the right set of tools and the right set of people. Generally, I think. But I still love the fact that people can't just that people don't believe that the Egyptians built the pyramids. I think that's beyond a joke. It really is. But yeah, metempsychosis. What she's basically saying is, you try to walk backward. Nothing is lost. Oh, there's a wee lovely wee fly, little insect crawling on my page, and I don't want to turn it over. Hang on a second, folks. Come here, little thing. Yeah. Oh no, you're going to have to move. Sorry, I am the guy that wouldn't harm a fly. I do not want to crush a little fly that's written. I'm at the bottom of the page and I need to turn it over. Come on. Give me a wee hand. Hop on that. There you go. There's a cactus for you. There we are. I'll leave that up there. There we go. Saved the fly from getting flattened. Apologie. And the woman says, "Alia, I don't understand." And Alia replies, "You live in the air, but you do not see it." Alia said, sharpness in her voice. "Are you a lizard? Your voice has the Fremen accent. Does a Fremen try to bring back the dead? What do we need our dead? What do we need from our dead except their water?" I've written next to that, her son is dead. But the answer is vague. It's mysterious. And does not answer the woman's question. But if your son's dead, what does it matter? He's just a husk. Who gives a monkeys as long as we got his water? This kind of thing, if you're a Fremen. But for someone who's an oracle, whose vision that probably could see whether he's dead or not, it's a bit harsh, I thought. But I've just written down her son is dead. Pretty much, that's what I got from that, and that he will have a different form. You will see him again. I suppose is the first part. Nothing is lost; everything returns later. But you may not recognize the changed form that returns. That's right out of Pythagoras, I think. So our next supplicant, if you like, a man down in the center of the nave. Sorry, down in the center of the nave. A man in a rich red cloak lifted both hands, the sleeves falling to expose white-clad arms. "Alia," he shouted, "I have had a business proposal. Should I accept?" Alia's response: "You come here like a beggar," Alia said. "You look for the golden bowl, but you will find only a dagger." So I suppose if that is an oracle, you've come like a beggar here to my temple, and you're looking for a golden bowl, but what you'll get is a knife, a dagger between the ribs. So danger is, should I accept? If based on what the man has asked, should I accept? The answer is probably no, is how he might interpret that. But as you can see, everything that Alia says is open to interpretation and is vague, like all oracles. It really is, what do you read into it, I think, Excuse me. The next one's a voice. So we've had a woman and a man. The next one is a male voice, I believe, but it just goes with something neutral, I suppose. And this is a bit weird. "I have been asked to kill a man," a voice shouted. From off to the right, a deep voice with siege tones, so a Fremen. "Should I accept? Accepting, would I succeed?" So again, with the beginning, Alia says this: "Beginning and end are a single thing." Alia snapped. "I have not told you before? You didn't come here to, sorry, have I not told you before? You didn't come here to ask that question. What is it you cannot believe that you must come here and cry out against it?" And I got that. I've been asked to kill a man, that a reason has been provided, and that the person who's going to do the killing doesn't believe it. That's what she's sort of saying here, I think. You didn't come here to ask that question. Should I accept? Should anything I'm accepting, would I succeed? What is it you cannot believe that you must come here and cry out against it? So I suppose that's kind of, again, put back on the person talking. And someone saying, "I'm going to commit murder in public inside a religious building." And you kind of wonder why there aren't little sort of, palace guards coming along, or temple guards coming, just grabbing this guy and disappearing him, And in particular for someone coming along in a moment, I think that's, what I would expect to happen here. Excuse me. Ooh. So a woman near Paul says, "Oh, I can't stop doing that. She's in a fierce mood tonight," a woman near Paul muttered. "Have you ever seen her this angry?" And Paul's thoughts are, "She knows I'm out here. Did she see something in the vision that angered her? Is she raging at me?" "Alia," a man directly in front of Paul called. Now, this guy's right in front of Paul, by the way. "Tell these businessmen and faint hearts how long your brother will rule." And there's an exclamation mark at the end of that, and that's an order. Everyone else is asking questions. "Should I accept anything? Have you seen my son? Is he dead?" This one is, "Tell these businessmen and faint hearts how long your brother will rule." And it's quite a nasty question, isn't it? It's got an exclamation mark on it. He's obviously shouting, probably because of the nature of the phrase. Now, this is a guy I would expect to be disappeared in a second by, Paul's people, because that's the sort of thing that happens in this universe. And it's suggestive. And if we think about what's going on here, you can almost wonder, is this a face dancer or something? Who is this, and what, a man, and he's right in front of Paul. Come back. Hang on. Oh, there we go. So these wee little fruit flies in amongst my cactus, if you like, but they're coming down to see my book. It's weird. So Alia says, I permit you to look around that corner by yourself. Alia snarled. You carry your prejudice in your mouth. It is because my brother rides the worm of chaos that you have roof and water. And then, and this question, I suppose, Alia, with a fierce gesture, clutching her robe, Alia whirled away, strode through the shimmering ribbon of light, and was lost in the darkness behind. And of course, we were getting all of this about there are things in the dark. It is the abyss is pregnant with, and so she disappears back into this darkness. With a fierce gesture, I wonder what that was. Is it up here? And is lost in the darkness behind. Immediately, acolytes took up the closing chant, but their rhythm was off. Obviously, they've been caught by the unexpected ending of the rite, so the thing's been cut short. She's been snarling, snapping, and has sharpness in her voice. And yeah, she's not happy. She's not been particularly nice to anybody. And as much as the different aspects of her character are presented in the two songs, she's not provided any succor, if you like, to this woman who fears that her son is dead and probably on another planet fighting for, he's killed on some, was it, they say my son was killed on Muritan. Why hasn't she got confirmation? This is fighting for the jihad of the Atreides. She just wants to know, is he dead? Will I ever see him again? Never. Never's a long time. But we're getting a sense, that idea of reincarnation, metempsychosis, if you like, is quite interesting. But yeah, she's not happy, and off she goes. And the rite of the oracle is cut short. Throws off the acolytes. An incoherent mumbling rose on all sides of the crowd. Paul felt the stirring around him, restless, dissatisfied. And a woman near Paul says this. It was that fool with his stupid question about business. A woman near Paul muttered, the hypocrite. And I went, no, it wasn't. It wasn't that guy. I think it was the guy afterwards. But I thought that was kind of funny. The woman in the crowd didn't really get it. I think it's the remark that's well, it's not a remark. It's an imperative, isn't it? It's an order. Tell these businessmen and faint hearts. That's the people that have spoken prior to him. How long your brother will rule? Give us a number if you can. Is that someone poking at the oracle, testing it? And she says, I'll let you figure that out. Permit you to look around that corner by yourself. You carry your own prejudice in your mouth. It is because my brother rides the worm of chaos that you have roof and water. And chaos, the worm of chaos, I suppose, is what has replaced the Empire of Order under Shaddam IV. But I just like that the woman near Paul, it was that fool with his stupid question about business. Oh, the hypocrite. I don't think she gets it. But for Paul, I think, what had Alia seen? What track through the future? We get a little bit about this now. So something had happened here tonight, souring the rite of the oracle. Usually the crowd clamoured for Alia to answer their pitiful questions. They came as beggars to the oracle. Yes. Again, that term, beggars, etc. We've got the mob, etc. They're supplicants is what they are. That's what I would call them. They came as beggars to the oracle, yes. He had heard them thus many times as he'd watched, hidden in the darkness behind the altar. what had been different about this night. So yeah, it's Paul's experienced this many times. It's how would I put it? For anybody who's ever, I was a barman for a long time, for about 12 years, sort of helped me pay my way through university and stuff. And there's a hell of a difference being on that side of the bar where you're sober and serving people drinks, and being on the other side where everyone's Bluetooth and receiving the drinks, if you see what I mean. And then, not, I don't really drink anymore, but then to be on the other side, I suppose, if you've been a barman, it gives you a bit of sympathy and empathy for the bar staff, and you tend to try to treat them nice, etc. No matter where you go. But often people are very, the drunkenness and the rudeness that you can get on one side of the bar, I kind of liken it to that, if you know what I mean. But what's been different about this night? And the old Fremen, this is Rasir, tugged Paul's sleeve, nodded towards the exit. The crowd already was beginning to push in that direction. Paul allowed himself to be pressed along with them, the guide's hand upon his sleeve. There was the feeling in him that his body had become the manifestation of some power he could no longer control. He had become a non-being. There he existed, allowed himself to be led through the streets of his city, following a track so familiar to his visions that it froze his heart with grief. And again, this, everything should be familiar here. There's things that are happening or not happening that generally I think that Paul's vision doesn't cover, and it surprises him. Or in this one, I think he's a bit gutted that he suppressed a cry of disappointment. She had not said the thing he'd wanted to hear. And Paul's thoughts here, just at the very end, I should know what Alia saw. I have seen it enough times myself. And she didn't cry out against it. She saw the alternatives too. So it kind of answers this question, I suppose, that is that how much has their vision, has their abilities created divergent paths, if you like, for this Janus aspect, Paul and Alia. And it looks like no, there's still a level of winner, and it's possibly, is it because she's drinking probably the water of life and transmuting it, taking melange, but for the oracle, if you like. But this is what Paul thinks anyway. Whether that's true or not isn't necessarily the case. But he believes that she's angry because, again, that they're kind of powerless in a sense that if they don't follow this path, she's seen the alternatives too. And again, we got that going back a little bit, didn't we, about the, let me see, where was it? I think it was in chapter 15. Yes, if we looked at the epigraph in chapter 15, the other paths may be imagined only with the deepest revulsion. But that little bit in it, Lord, save us from the other paths which Muad'Dib covered with the waters of his life. So it seems that Paul thinks, certainly he's been trying to figure out what, are we still on the same page, etc., etc. Is there anyone that can kind of have empathy or understand what he's going through? And if so, it's probably Alia, Though, again, this chapter sort of still begins with kind of, Chani misunderstanding him and this kind of thing, even though getting that a little bit of a sense of him, So there we are. We're in another notebook, folks, and that's the end of this chapter. And there's all sorts there, but particularly, I suppose, the nature of the Atreides religion, the use of the oracle, how it works on a mob and a crowd. And this is a lot to do with the messianic impulses that overcome the masses. All these people can see the future. Tell me this, tell me that. Can you help me here? Can you do this? They make demands, they make questions, and some are even giving orders. Which makes there we go. I suppose that's our first big notebook on Dune Messiah. There we go. Oh, we're doing pretty well with this one. I think that's quite good. We've got lots of little stuff, all sorts of little things in it. I think the favourite thing I've done in it so far is that. I sort of paid a wee bit of attention and trying to the bit that's down here, I suppose, is a description of Gaius Helen Mohiam's cell. But I quite enjoyed kind of scribbling the Dune tarot card of the Great Worm, etc. But yeah, there we go, folks. That's chapter 16. If anybody's got any wee questions or comments, fire away. I thought it was a really good chapter. I think there's some really good writing in there from Frank, especially these kind of flower similes and metaphors around Alia and her voice and the rites, etc. And I really did enjoy the two kind of the far places that Alia had been, the little kind of songs. And I think the use of the idea of Balak, the king of the Moabs. If you have a wee look into that story, if you like, it wouldn't take you too long to read it. It's quite interesting, but it both within the kind of the Kabbalah thing there, about Jippor being this magical bird. I thought that was fascinating, and of course being an oracle. And as always, you kind of read these things going, I wonder what that's about. Or why is Frank using this particular reference? And a little bit of investigation tends to turn up something that actually makes a lot of sense, Cynthia's asking, was Alia aware of Paul's presence to meet his guide to Otheym's house and the danger he's about to face, or did she only become aware of it via her transvision in the temple? No, I think she knows he's there, out in the crowd. I think all of his security are involved as well, and I think just I don't know. I think get the sense that they're kind of attuned, but all you sort of saying is it kind of is whenever she took that. I don't know. I got the sense that she knew he was there, and he's waiting. I think as well for her to say something. So I think she is aware of his presence. And of course, it's interesting because this chap Rasir is just going to pop in and pop off again, isn't it? This old Fremen who comes to help. Someone that Banerjee knows, but a person from the Siege days. But no, I think she's aware that he's in the crowd. And I think he's the equivalent of GPS. I think, if you know what I mean. He's being tracked. And the Atreides don't do really much without knowing, I suppose, what's going on. But there's a lot of theatre there, I think. But I think it's just interesting how Paul experiences it, Well, it's pretty good. There we go, folks. Goodness gracious, it's an interesting wee chapter. We're heading on down. As I said, we're now 2/3 of the way through the book. Chapter 17 is going to be something of similar length to this one. We're going, yes, we got Bijaz and Otheym, etc. So all things are starting to push forward and accelerate. As I said, so the next chapter hopefully we'll see is again on Thursday at 9 p.m. GMT +1. It's the chapter that begins production growth and income growth must not get out of step in my empire. That is the substance of my command. There are to be no balance of payment difficulties between the different spheres of influence, and the reason for this is simply because I command it. I want to emphasize my authority in this area. I am the supreme energy eater of this domain and will remain so alive or dead. My government is the economy. Order and council, the Emperor Paul Muad'Dib. So that's looking forward to that. But yeah, I suppose I pointed that out earlier, but if anybody's a big Lord of the Rings fan, you can, I'll tell you can grab this off the Pirate Bay. But it's easily bought on CD. I dare say I wouldn't go as far as getting the tapes. It's a wonderful production of the Lord of the Rings, so atmospheric. All of the performances are incredible. It's in 13 one-hour episodes pretty much, but it's It was pretty much prepared and done for radio by Brian Sibley, who's a guy that Peter Jackson brought in to work on Lord of the Rings. And if you actually get the continuity of actors, that Ian Holm plays Bilbo, but Ian Holm is Frodo in this. If you see what I mean, it kind of reminds you on some things, I suppose, that maybe Denis Villeneuve has done, but it's I know everybody's kind of used to oh goodness, what's his Ian McKellen as Gandalf, but Michael Horden is a great actor, and he's still, in my mind, he's a wonderful voice actor, but you know him from films like Where Eagles Dare and stuff like that. And he's broadsword calling Danny Boy, this kind of thing, and boy, wouldn't it, if Richard Burton is broadsword, Paddington Bear, and all the original sort of 2D, 3D Paddington cartoons and stuff, But yeah, if anybody, to me, it's 13 hours, by the way, as well. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Probably the second best. Yeah, I'd say it's this. No, it could be the first. I don't know. It could be the best thing the BBC have ever done on radio. You'd have to put the great triumvirate of radio shows from the BBC as The Lord of the Rings, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Old Harry's Game. But the one that I think is the most re-listenable, the funniest, the one that you can get the most out of again and again is probably Old Harry's Game. Hitchhikers gets a wee bit boring after a while. Especially when if you listen to the radio versions, and then you can go to the books, and then you can go to the it's the TV series, etc. But they're all slightly different, Carlos saying, I don't know the limits of Alia's prescience, or even the form they took. Yeah, we don't. Do you know the really weird thing is if we forget about some things possibly. The thing that popped into my mind there was that Alia, as a baby, was able to kind of go into the future and leave a message, almost like a voicemail, if you like, for want of a better metaphor, for Paul. And that Alia's powers are supposed to be stronger, but yeah, what does she see? And we have to assume. I suppose the question is, would Alia see what's going to happen to her in Children of Dune? Does she? I think the suggestion probably is that she knows from what Paul says. That's only if again we're told what Paul thinks here. We don't know if it's true or not. But I think both the Atreides children, I think their abilities of prescience are pretty full on, and I suppose we'll get a sense of that. A little bit later on, I think. But what does she see, and does she is it necessary? I suppose it's the thing though. If you could see your own fate and your own destiny, would it drive you mad? Knowing that I'm going to die on this day or this kind of thing. I suppose that's what are the limits of Alia's prescience. What are the limits of any kind of prescience? I kind of wrote a story a long time ago about a person who could see the future and the past of any kind of object at all, right down to the molecular level, but couldn't see the future or the past of his own, all the molecules that occupied his own body, if you like. And the idea was that he creates a set of suits, and he can see the future of the suits, and if they're unique enough, and he agrees to wear them every one different suit per day. So the idea of the story was called the 7 Suits of Erskine D, if you like, which I've written, but I started rewriting it a wee while back. It was kind of based on some of the problems I found in Dune, and just kind of loopholes, this kind of thing. But yeah, it is. What are the limits of their prescience? Are there limits? The one thing we do know is they're not omniscient. So prescience is foreknowledge, but omniscience is all knowledge, if you like, knowing everything. And that's kind of what the Skylaxi were saying about Paul, But there's a little bit of mystery to Alia as well. I think that's, and they said ultimately we're going to head down the tragic route with them there. Hello, big love. Sorry, I've got a doggy bag in the tail here, and I may have to actually get her out for a wee minute, folks. But listen, I'm absolutely shattered. So I think I'll call it a night, folks, and I'll happily pick up any more questions the next time. But goodness, we had a good sort of 40 minutes natter, hadn't we, before we even got started tonight, which I really enjoyed, and thank you so much. I love the conversation when things go like that on this little channel. It's really good fun. So we'll be back next week, hopefully. I'm gonna no, we'll be back next week, Thursday at 9 p.m. GMT +1 with chapter 17 of Dune Messiah. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and get all that correspondence done over this weekend, and a wee bit of work to do around the house and stuff as well. I'm going to start trying to get some videos done as well. So there we go, folks. But I'll not pepper pipe them out until they're done. But there's Bojack saying, take it easy. Cynthia saying, thanks. So thank you guys. Thanks as always for your contributions. If anyone out there has got anything on the word Temag, Temag, etymologically speaking, I'd love to hear it. That one, I said we'll put it this way, I could have had these notes done a lot easier if I decided to look at it at the end. But that one killed a lot of time for me. But it was very much like I went to the mountain the other day to meet the wise man. He was not there. I learned many things. It was one of those. So I'm taking it for a kind of very interesting thing, but I still didn't get a meaning for that word. So if anyone's got any ideas, I'd love to hear it, because we don't like words to slip by. But otherwise, folks, I'll say thank you very much, as always, to a lot of you. Take it easy wherever you are. Look after yourselves and have a good night or good morning. And we'll see you real soon. All the very best now. Take it easy, folks. Do, 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 do. Ba, 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 ba.